Everyone. We actually have a Data Science for Everyone Slack channel where you can post your reactions, your ideas, and your work throughout the event. And you can also, we'll also follow up. And a lot of that will actually be in your email. And so there should be a link here as well as a link that we'll drop in the chat for folks to be able to follow us in the Slack channel. Finally, we would love to have folks engage with us on social media as we proceed throughout this event and afterwards. We have a hashtag DS4, the number 4, everyone. And you can follow us for Twitter updates on DS for Everyone that we have launched. And finally, we're going to have opportunities for Q&A throughout this session, and so folks should feel free to join us. I'm going to, part of the goal for this is really for this to be the beginning, and so we're going to have lots of calls to action throughout this event. Ways for you to join the coalition in our Slack, ways for you to join the important work that RISC is doing, ways for you to reach out to us and join our monthly meetings and actually generate ideas for how you can step up. We're going to do another one of these commitments events in the spring. And, I really hope that you sort of get involved. But, first step is, why is this important? Why should we get involved? What is this movement about? And it's my thrill to introduce Pamela Northam, the First Lady of Virginia, as our first speaker. Part of the reason we were thrilled to have her is that Virginia has actually been a real early leader in expanding data science education. Not only are they, one of the commitments that we hope to highlight today is a commitment to advance data science education through Code Virginia with the Virginia Department of Education, which is working to revise its math pathways to expand access to data science education. And the First Lady is actually has been a dedicated advocate for STEM education and has been a former educator. And so I'd love to introduce her onto the stage and give us some thoughts on why this matters and how others can get involved.
Good morning. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Mr. Gar. I really appreciate what you did under the Obama administration, especially the White House Science Fair. As an old science teacher, I thought that was so wonderful. And I know so many students really enjoyed being a part of that. Well, I'm so honored to be with all of you all today, and we're thrilled that you all are getting the word out about the importance of data science for all. As near and dear to our hearts, for sure. In fact, a friend of ours calls us the first family of STEM, because I'm a pediatric therapist and science educator. My daughter is a web developer. My son is a neurosurgeon, and my husband is a pediatric neurologist. Oh, and also the 73rd governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. But first, before we get started, I want to thank you all. Many I know are educators or administrators who've been heroically holding the line for our children throughout this long and awful pandemic. Your courage and creativity, not to mention your perseverance, has been an inspiration to us all. Your students will be more resilient and recover better because of you, and we are all so grateful. And certainly never before have we seen such a need for STEM literacy and understanding data science. More people than ever before now know that data science like bioinformatics and genomics can have such practical application or even life and death consequences. It's been vital to surviving this pandemic and rebuilding our nation. In fact, as a STEM educator, it was my goal to make data science more visible, tangible, and relevant. Data science already exists throughout the curriculum, but we're now taking great strides to integrate and highlight that data science to our students. When I traveled to schools to thank and encourage teachers earlier this year, they would often confess to me how much they miss their students, that real-time interaction in the classroom, and I can definitely relate. In fact, my staff knows that they better just plan on a delay for the day in the schedule because they just can't get me away from the kids when we're visiting classrooms. As a STEM educator, it was such a privilege to open that door of curiosity. I love seeing the wonder on a child's face as they discovered something new and began to understand the world around them a little more deeply. To ignite that spark of interest in STEM, not just for a great future career, but also to become STEM literate, smart consumers, and informed voters. For some reason, too, I always got the blame when there was a terrible smell in the hallways at school or smoke alarms went off and we all had to evacuate school again, usually because of my students creating their own hands-on experiments. With data science, as with much of science, it was easy to see that young children are natural observers. They see patterns everywhere. And this starts early in development in those first few years when the brain is growing exponentially. Talk about data sets. In those first few years of life, more than 1 million new neural connections form every second. Brain architecture is comprised of billions of connections between individual neurons across different areas of the brain. One of the first developmental skills we introduce or we encourage in our littlest learners is count, group, and compare. Sound familiar? Kids will look at flowers, comparing bugs, toys, or even their pets. In early elementary years, in my classroom, a favorite introductory activity was using bright colored candy, always a good motivator, like M&Ms, for example, where they collect data, make predictions on how many pieces of each color are in a bag, and then work together to create data visualizers. Later, as fifth graders, they would ask questions, do research, and come up with their own inventions, which we submitted to any contest I could find. We won in Toshiba, Sally Ride, National Science Foundation's Kids Science Challenge. We actually won a trip to a lab and presented at Boston Science Museum and the fair at MIT one year. Engaging in project-based learning opportunities like that led to more data fluency so they could use it and not fear it. They also begin to recognize there's a lot of data science and AI in their gaming and their favorite apps. I recently just visited a program not far from here where they partner with Newport News Shipbuilding, a company who provides employees to work with teachers and students to demonstrate the real-world applications of using VR in engineering design and manufacturing. Using coding to work out lasers and drills, the students were so proud of the really cool nameplates they made. They also provide internships that often lead to employment there. You never know when a hands-on experiment or unforgettable experience in nature or writing that perfect code will inspire the next Katherine Johnson, Sally Ride, or Jane Goodall. In fact, just a little over 50 years ago, and of course I'm barely old enough to remember, the excitement of watching along with the rest of the world those flickering images on a black and white TV when the United States did the impossible and sent people to the moon. This groundbreaking accomplishment was made possible by many, including the pioneering women in STEM right here in Virginia, our very own hidden figures. And we want to ensure the Commonwealth has a diverse and robust STEM workforce for the next 50 years and beyond. As Virginians, we've always been explorers, revolutionaries, and innovators. So it should come as no surprise that Virginia is one of the best states for education, employment, and growth in STEM fields. The need for STEM expertise is growing at warp speed as Virginia is expected to add nearly 150,000 new STEM jobs in the next few years. However, our STEM education pipeline has struggled to keep pace with economic demand. Educational inequities too often limit access to advanced courses in STEM disciplines, credentials, and work-based learning for many of our most vulnerable and underrepresented students. In order to close those achievement opportunity gaps, meet the growing economic demands for STEM-prepared employees, and maintain our recognition as one of the best states for STEM, we knew that we had to be strategic about how we prepare our young people and adapt to the rapidly evolving needs of our employers. So Virginia created a unified vision and adopted a set of dynamic shared goals to inform how we prepare students for the future. Last year, we created a STEM plan for the state, integrating computer science into our broader state STEM plan, and became one of the first states to establish computer science as foundational literacy for K through 12 education. Virginia is the only state that limits governors to non-consecutive terms. So that's why we hit the ground running and worked hard to pass legislation this year to create a permanent STEM Education Advisory Board made up of members who cover the full education spectrum from pre-K to higher ed and the private sector. This board is required to report to future governors and the General Assembly to ensure Virginia maintains an integrated and equitable STEM education system from cradle to career. As we enter the age of big data, we are preparing our digital learners not only to engage with the new technology, but we are committed to doing it equitably and meaningfully. By making it fundamental to education, we're ensuring that every student has the opportunity to work with data science so that they have those core foundations that are critical for us to remain competitive in the future. We are working to revive our standards of learning in science, computer science, and math to be integrated into other subjects and areas of learning so that our students are learning to think critically and apply concepts throughout. Data science is at the core. It leads students to analyze and discover their own conclusions, often unveiling new truths from economics and history to new cutting-edge science. Data Science for All has led to amazing collaborations between the Virginia Department of Education's Math Office and the statewide nonprofit Code VA and my friend Chris Davey that you mentioned earlier. It's leading to new programs and innovation that is scalable and sustainable. Increasing access to high-quality data science education is needed to support all students to engage in their community, achieve a meaningful degree, and, if desired, pursue a data-centric career. These are good, high-paying jobs. They're looking for great minds of all kinds. Yet barely 11% of our high school students take statistics, and very few districts take advantage of opportunities to modernize curriculum by integrating data into subject areas such as social studies and humanities. I'm so proud of the work that Virginia has begun, and I'm looking forward to the day when these programs are universal. These are vital job skills that can apply to countless career fields, even if students choose not to pursue higher education, like at Newport News Shipbuilding I mentioned earlier. Data science classes help to create an informed and ready workforce. It can even affect our health. Every child deserves a great start in life. Ensuring equal access to this type of education will be essential in increasing equity and opportunities. You know, COVID has only further revealed the extremes of inequality in our country, and the past year has accelerated the digital transformation in our economy. Creating a strong universal foundation in data education will prepare all of our students to succeed in a brighter future, not just the ones who have traditionally held a seat at the keyboard. We cannot afford to lose out on the potential of even one young person. As Reshma Sanjani, who created Women Who Code, the great support network that my daughter is a part of, as she says, we must stand up and fight for an America that welcomes all young doers and dreamers. As leaders in education, you truly hold the future in your hands, and I look forward to what we will all accomplish together. Thank you all so very much, and I look forward to hearing more from you today.
Thank you so much, First Lady Northam. I think those were really inspiring remarks, both on the need, but also this idea that Virginia has really led. And, you know, we live, one of the amazing things and unique things about America is education is very locally led, you know, state and local. And so governors are going to matter a ton on how this work happens. I think, you know, your remarks on what, you know, what did people think we needed 50 years ago and what was the economy? It's always hard to predict. But I actually think part of the reason we paired you with Eric Schmidt, who's going to be our next speaker, is to really, you know, it's hard to look into the future, but on the other hand, the future comes at you fast. And one of our responsibilities to our young people is to actually, we don't know what lives they want to lead, but how do we actually give them the opportunities and skills to go, you know, to go make change in the world? And so it's, you know, it's my real honor to welcome Eric to the stage to just give his thoughts. You know, I think on one level, this feels somewhat straightforward, Eric, but on another level, I don't think we're actually doing a good job yet on giving these as opportunities to every kid. So wonderful to have you here, and would love to, introduce you onto stage to give your thoughts.
Well, thank you, Kumar. The First Lady and the Governor of Virginia have just done a fantastic job, I think, on almost everything, if I may say, First Lady. So well done. Thank you for everything you've done. I'm very proud to say that I am a Virginian. I grew up in Virginia, and I'll tell you the story of why data science in Virginia is so important. Literally 50 years ago, and this is of a concern given my age, a very clever faculty member at my high school, public high school in Northern Virginia, decided to bring in what at the time was a sexy new computer terminal. For those of you who have never seen one, this was called an ASR-33 teletype with a 300-bit modem. And this was my first exposure, which I got through public high school in Virginia. And it was because of enterprising faculty and, of course, my parents, who thought this was at least curious and would keep me busy. The rest is history. I owe this to Virginia and to the public high schools of Virginia. My success literally was a direct result of that. God knows what would have happened if it had not happened to me. That's the story that I want to say over and over again for this next generation. It's interesting that data science has been largely neglected, in my view. Some of the computer science stuff has now become important, but the data science part, which we use every day in every known way, is even more important, which is why, Kumar, I'm so happy that you and your team were able to organize this and how committed we are to making this happen. It's interesting that it's sort of hard to overstate the role of data in the world that we do. When I was at Google in 2010, I said, with great fanfare, I might add, that there were 5 exabytes. An exabyte is a large number. It's much larger than you think it is. Of information was created between the dawn of civilization and 2003. And in 2010, I announced that I was very impressed that we were generating that amount of data every 2 days. So I looked back it up, and now we are now creating 350 exabytes of information every 2 days. So much data that every 40 minutes is the data created between the dawn of time and 2003. So humans have trouble understanding that kind of compound explosion. But one way to think about the future is that the future is all about data, infinite telemetry, infinite of one thing or another, things you like, things you don't like, things are being manipulated, things that are being taught, things are being sold, things are being tracked, blah, 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 for all sorts of reasons all around the world, and especially because of the sensor and IoT revolution. So if you don't understand how this data is being collected and how it interrelates, you're going to be operating with blinders that will really prevent you from taking advantage of modern society as you grow up. I cannot stress that every single modern job is going to be data intensive in a world with that kind of explosion. Now you say, oh, we'll let the geeks deal with it, or so forth and so on, but every job will be imbued by these sorts of issues. And what's interesting, when we looked at math and science, they don't really talk about data. They talk about algorithms, which is important and good, but they don't really talk about data science. And data science is a proper field now. It really wasn't maybe when I started, but now it certainly is. There's a great deal of research. There's a lot of distinguished faculty. There's a lot of agreed upon pedagogy in this area. So if you don't address this, it will hurt our longer term economic competitiveness and national security. And I won't go into it, but we're in this huge grand strategy fight with China, who is both a partner and a competitor. And trust me, they're teaching data science. Among other things, in China, they don't have any rules preventing you from taking people's other data. And so everyone's aggregating all the data that they want. So it seems to me that what you need to do is you need to have world-class courses and curriculum. You need to train teachers. You need to have developing, ongoing challenges and projects and mentoring opportunities, a research agenda, which I just highlighted. And you need an advocacy campaign, which again, the First Lady did such a good job. I just do what she just said. So we're making lots of announcements today. I wanted to highlight a few. San Diego Unified School District is announcing plans to expand data science education across all grade levels. Listen to that, all grade levels. Utah State Board of Education announcing plans to develop a data science micro-credential for Utah teachers, 2021. SAP and the 49ers are doing a data science course for K through 12 students. DC Public Schools partnering with American University, another place I spent a lot of time at, to provide master's levels coursework for more teachers this summer. Data Camp will provide an opportunity to do its online learning platform in the United States for high school teachers and students. What I learned when you're a kid, you think it's all about you. What I now understand is that when I was growing up, there were all these adults who are now hopefully retired, who basically had a plan for me. I just didn't know it. And there weren't very many of me, but now we need lots of me, and we need lots of people, and we need this whole wave of being created. The wave is our economic future, it's our national security and so forth. That's why this is so important, and what you guys are doing is so important. So anyway, I mean, I can go on and on, but you'll hear lots about this. You got 250 announcements, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. I'm really, really happy that we are doing this with some partners. We're doing this with Ken Griffin of Citadel, who I've worked with for many years, and the Siegel Family Endowment, which I worked with for many, many years. These are leaders who share our joint collective passion around learning and education, and each of them has made significant contributions to the field of learning science and training and developing teachers. Everybody gets it. You get the teachers at the state of the art, the kids are at the state of the art, right? There's a formula. And by the way, this formula is one we inherited. It was pioneered hundreds of years ago. It's a well understood formula. I'm so grateful to what happened to me in Virginia. I want us to recreate that opportunity for 1 million people and not just me. Thank you very, very much. Thank you all. And thank you, Kumar.
Thank you, Eric. That was amazing. And I think that charge is totally right, which is, you know, there's always adults who are looking out for us, and how do we make sure they're looking out for all our kids? So thank you, Eric. Thank you so much. I think that actually tees us up well for the amazing panel that we have coming out right on top of this. And so just to sort of set this up, you know, part of, I think, what we're trying, you know, Eric sort of framed this as every job is going to be a data job. You know, the idea that it is increasingly data science, you know, is quickly embedding itself across the economy in really interesting and powerful ways. So it's not just, you know, sits within the tech sector per se. And I think that has important implications for how do we sort of think about making sure it really benefits everyone, and sort of this question around the workforce and equity question. So part of our goal for this next panel is to start to sort of unpack both where's the economy, where's it going, what are ways that data science intersects, but then also what are going to be some of the core questions, how do we make this for all, and sort of the equity pieces to it. So I'm going to pass this to our fearless moderator, Katie Knight of the Siegel Family Endowment. And Katie, thank you for all of your leadership on this. You're welcome to talk a little bit about why you're supporting the coalition work, and then if you want to introduce your panel.
Yeah, thanks, Kumar, and thanks for asking me to moderate this. We'll see, I guess, momentarily whether that was a good idea or not. I'm excited to represent Siegel Family Endowment and to be moderating this incredible panel. Briefly, I will just say that as an organization that has supported developments in STEM and supported, I think, the movement for computer science prior to this, we're really excited to see, I think, this advancement, to see the recognition that data science has an important role to play in creating the sort of not just, you know, productive workers of the future, but productive citizens of the future. And so that's why I'm especially excited that our panel is focused on sort of data science and workforce development and community. And with that, I will just introduce our really amazing panelists very briefly. So Jessica Lyons, Senior Academic Program Manager at Tableau for Teaching. Trina Wilkerson, who's president of the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Leanne DeLizer, co-founder and executive director of CS4All, and Karina Edmonds, Senior Vice President and Head of Academies and University Alliances at SAP. So we're going to talk, like I said, about workforce and communities. And really just to frame this, I'll say, as I think Eric referenced in what he was talking about, and as we've all realized, this is about the future. It's about the future of our economy. It's about the future of our sort of citizenry. Demand for employees savvy at data-driven decision-making and data analytics continues to increase. IBM correctly predicted a 28% surge in demand for data sciences in 2020. And the BLS considers data science to be one of the top 20 fastest growing jobs and has projected 31% growth over the next decade. But I think we all know that young people are not necessarily being prepared for this future in the workforce, much less for, I think, just the data-driven world that we all currently inhabit. So my first question to the panel, for whomever would like to be the sacrificial lamb who jumps in first, how can data science education help build a workforce for the future? And what's at risk if students don't get the data science skills that they critically need?
Hi, Katie. Thank you first. Thanks for having me today. This is a critical question, and I love that the foundation is putting it in the lens of economic development. And, of course, we all know that having a diverse workforce is advantageous to the bottom line, but the fact that we just can't afford to leave a great part of our society behind and not joining the workforce. This is an issue that we've seen for many years. I've been working in getting more underrepresented students, more women in science for a long time. And now data science is just an additional bucket of jobs, a huge bucket, as we've all recognized, and that's why we're here today. And the importance that we absolutely have to get everybody at the table as the growth of data science jobs just continues to skyrocket, and we've all seen that. And I love the fact that in this particular discussion, this is also tied into the economic and socioeconomic gaps that exist in our society. And that's part of the reason why I've always pushed science. There's no secret that STEM jobs allow you to receive something like 25 to 35% higher salaries just coming out of undergrad. And so for those reasons, I've always been a huge advocate and continue to be. So happy to be here, and I would love to hear from my fellow panelists as well.
And to build on what Karina just shared, I think it points to how mathematics and statistics are key facets of data science, and having a really deep understanding of mathematics and science, mathematics and statistics, to really help students to understand and critique their world. And Katie, as you mentioned, and others have mentioned prior to this in the opening, that while the economic is certainly a huge part of this, but Katie, you also brought about the idea of the community and being a citizen and being supportive of that as well, and being able to contribute to that. And I think that is also a huge part of this, and why mathematical and statistical thinking are really key processes for us to invest in for all students, each and every student. And it also points to the idea that it's not reserved for high school or college. It is pre-K through 12 and plus on up. But I think one of the things that we've got to do some real thinking about is data science, mathematics, and statistics education across pre-K through 12. And I think that's going to be critical in order to prepare our students for their future, okay? And so that's something else I would like to add.
For me, I hate to do this, but I like to talk about the risk part of the question, is the risk of not having data science be in there. Like, one, we can always go into bottom line, what is the definition of data science? Working with universities across the world and working with different programs, I think what we can all agree on is that there's not a consensus and standard with that. But I think what we can all say is that there's a huge risk. And right now we're living that risk. And while I can't speak specifically for Tableau, I can tell you the risk for myself, identifying as a woman, as a Black woman from Chicago. What I can say, the risk is misunderstanding, misinformation, underrepresentation, and more importantly, participation in understanding research and data. So as we talked about data skills being important, it's that critical thinking, it's the understanding, it's the analysis of it, because we are consumed with data more than ever, as you just talked about in the intro, more than ever. And more importantly, I guess when I'm looking in my own community is that not only are we consumed with data, but we're pushed. I went to an op-ed workshop and they were talking about cultural differences and expertise. And when they talked about that, the thing that really resonated for me was the fact that when you're trying to talk to certain communities, data is so important. As a matter of fact, that's what gets some people in the room. Not saying that that's a great thing, because lived experience is important, right? However, what we've learned is that sometimes using that data or that statistics or that research all of a sudden elevates a voice. And I guess when I look at it from my own perspective, is that although it is sad that a lived experience isn't good enough, so to speak, currently, but if we don't teach those skills, how can we ever be heard? I guess that's what I'm looking at as the risk. I see all of these initiatives, all of these policies, all of these legislative decisions that are being made, but they're being made about a culture or a community and not with a culture or community. So I think having those type of courses in different programs and teaching those skills of critical thinking, data analysis, argumentation are all imperative for everyone. And the risk of that, not to sound morbid, but I think COVID was one of them. I think that not having elevated voices, we see the risk of that every single day.
Jessica, I agree 1,000%. Here at Computer Science for All, we've worked with over 600 school districts across the nation, really helping them think about why computer science, which for us includes data science education, artificial intelligence education, like it's the big umbrella that all the pieces fall underneath. And this notion that each community is going to need to find their own reasons why. And Katie, you opened this with the jobs narrative of how important it is and how many careers that we can put into a bucket labeled data science there exist in the world. And access to those high-paying careers is really important. But let's be clear, data science and our ability to operate fluently in a data-rich society is a literacy. And so many people use that term without unpacking what it means to not be literate for students. And so imagine if your only reason to learn to write was if you were going to be in a career where you had to put words on a page, a reporter, an editor, an author. And yet, so many of us, I will bet every single person on this call is in a career where they have to write. And if they couldn't write, if they could not write fluently, they would be passed over for promotions, if not even just fired from their job. And it's this assumption, this fluency, this literate assumption that not only opens doors to these highly technical, lucrative careers, but also underpins the ability for anyone to participate in a white-collar workforce. And so if we really want to level the playing field, if we really do believe that students of all colors, races, backgrounds, socioeconomic status, people like myself, I grew up in rural America in a log cabin my father built. If I had not been able to reason with data as a part of my educational experience, there's no way that I would have even been able to be a teacher and maintain my own early career trajectory through that pathway. So I think we also have to understand that data fluency is a practice. And Trina's right, we need it from pre-K all the way up through college in order for every student to be able to meet employer expectations of that kind of data fluency and literacy, whether the title of their job has data in it or not.
Lynn, I think you've brought up a really important point, and I thank all of you for all of those answers because I think they all touched on really important things. And I think perhaps, Leanne, because we've experienced this with computer science, I think you've done something really smart that we need to do, which is to start to define what we're talking about when we talk about data science. And so I want to dig into that a little bit. And I think at the same time, dig into some of what you were talking about related to data literacy more broadly. So Leanne, I feel like you kind of began to put forward a definition for data science and how we think about it. So maybe if you want to just repeat that, and then I'd love for anyone else to agree or challenge that, and then perhaps also address what it means to be data literate and why that's important for all of our students, not just the students that are planning to have a career in data science.
I had the most amazing opportunity to work with Chris Wiggins, who is the chief data scientist for the New York Times, but also a faculty member at Columbia and really committed to New York City. And he helped, he served on my curriculum committee when we opened the Academy for Software Engineering. And he gave a talk about what is data science for us back in 2015. And he described it as this art. And I've always imagined the data scientist, if you think about that word science, right? They are doing little experiments. They're pulling numbers, asking questions, and using data to support the answers. Now, I was the lead author on the K-12 CS framework, which has a data strand within it. And I led the group that authored that data strand. And we had a lot of conversations about what that data strand needed to be that was additive to the work that they were doing, students were doing in mathematics, to the work that they were doing in science when they were graphing and producing. And so for us, and for me personally, data science is not just the ability to collect information, to perceive that information at scale. So in a way where the spreadsheet is longer than you can scroll through in a day, and then to translate it. How do you take that raw section of numbers and translate it into visual representations that are perceivable by a larger public audience? And then finally, to use it to make predictions, to ask what's next, to reflect what that representation tells you or doesn't tell you about the world, and how it can be accurate or inaccurate based upon the representation you've chosen. And so that, for me, finds the heart of data science and is how we framed it in the K-12 CS framework, which is being used by states and the Computer Science Teachers Association to produce standards of learning for students across the United States.
So, and Leanne, if I can add to that, I think you bring up a really good point. And one of the things that makes me think about when I think about how do we define computer science, sorry, not computer science, but data science and what that is, I think there are two things to think about. One is we need to collaborate to do that. There are many voices that need to be at the table in order to think about what that means. I come from mathematics and statistics perspective, but there are many, many aspects that need to be thought about when you're thinking about this. And there's some foundational understandings, things like what does it mean to be fluent in a particular area like mathematics or statistics. It's more than just skills and algorithms, because what you're talking about is being able to apply it and be able to use it. Data tells a story, and we have to know how to understand that story, what it means to us as individuals, but also collectively as well, how we see our world. And I think those are important things for us to think about. And so this collaborating and thinking about what data science is in education and in our world, I think is really important. But remembering some of these foundational things about problem solving and analysis and critical thinking and applying it in our lives, I think those are important. And also the ethics behind it. There are some that are looking at that, about thinking about the ethical responsibilities that we have. So I think there are many strengths that everyone brings to the table that we need to think about as we're thinking about what data science is.
So Katie, I want to follow up on Leah and Trina's comments. One on Leah's on the representation piece, which is so important, and then Trina on the story part. That representation is so important. And while we can all try to define data science, what we really need to do is represent it to school-age children in a way that's meaningful to them. That what does it mean? That data is being collected, even if you don't have a data science career, data science is being used for and against you at every level. The amount of data that's being collected on every move is staggering. The facial recognition, the cameras that are everywhere, and this visualization of data. And data tells a story. And if we don't have our voices, if we don't have a diverse set of voices, only one story will be told, and only one set of people will, will be applying that data. And so it is for students to understand how important it is. And this is part of the reason that SAP has partnered with the 49ers, because using football is something that kids relate to, and just to see how we use statistics and math in everything that's done. I mean, and not just football, in every sport. Increasingly, we have data that's being used. And so how is it in your everyday world that data is going to affect you? And why data science literacy is so important. Again, at the preschool level, just starting at preschool to kindergarten. And unfortunately, it starts with people feeling comfortable with math, I feel, because you're always going to have numbers. And I think some people, and I just want to also say to all those parents out there that even if you have some apprehension about math, to be careful how you speak about it to your children, because children will pick up on our own fears and hesitation, and how important it is for us to embrace this field and data science. That, again, even if you are not choosing to have a career in data science, it will impact your life in every way. I mean, in every way, and how important it is to have our voice be represented. So I think Jessica probably wanted to follow up.
For me, I definitely want to follow up more so on preparation, because I think I talked about the definitions, and I guess I want to stay true to my feelings on the definition, is that you operationalize it however you feel is best for your community, your culture, and in your environment. And I think that, again, if that was a silver bullet, I don't think we'd be here right now. I think we'd all be doing the work and saying, no time for this. With that being said, I guess the other part of the question is talking about preparation. I'm in agreement with everyone else, looking at specifically starting as early as pre-K, as a matter of fact, even earlier than that if possible. But if we're talking about the education piece, of course, pre-K is important. I guess the only other thing that I would like to steer away from is the conversations with math, the conversations with computer science, and using language in that way. And the only reason for that is I just don't think we're there yet. What I mean by that is, typically, if you look at the data that talks about majors and decisions, we can see that the STEM majors, as well as the mathematics and sciences courses, are not ones that typically underrepresented communities are from. And I think we need to start there on why. And as a matter of fact, I saw recent research, I believe it was from somewhere in Wisconsin, that they were saying as early as 5 years old, students were talking about that either they did not care for math. You don't even know what math is yet, but you already don't like it. So what that means to me is that, how are we as K-12 educators presenting that information? Are we really meeting people where they're at? Are we really seeing them? Are we already going into, oh, students are not prepared for this, as opposed to, are we really prepared for our students? Which again, I don't want to get on a soapbox, I guess, especially with critical race theory on there. I'm just saying that is important to have those conversations, because again, if the question is, how do we bring this program that typically sometimes has felt exclusionary, not intentionally, I don't think, but how do we bring this into all aspects? I think it starts with understanding culture, understanding community, and respecting it.
And I agree. I think that we need to be very careful not to approach this, as has been done with other areas, with a deficit view. We need to build on strengths, assets. I think that's very critical for us to remember and to be sure that we do in approaching this.
And I think to even complement that one further, I love, Dr. Edmonds, that you are partnering with the NFL to come up with sports-based examples of how data science works. I love that we have members and commitments from this community looking at how data science contributes to gardening, to medicine, to music.
Social issues.
Right? We know from computer science education, from 15 years of research, that no one message is going to apply to every single student, even within the same communities. And so the best thing we can do is create opportunities to demonstrate the breadth of what's possible, to allow those students to bring their authentic selves to that mathematics classroom, to that computer science classroom, and then say, this one is the one that I love. And this one is the reason why I am going to use this in my future life. Not that this one is somehow going to apply to my entire classroom or my entire community. And I think that for me is the joy that I have for the large community working both on computer science and data science, because every one of the educators, every one of the curriculum developers, all of these partners making commitments here are bringing those different lenses. And now our job when we work with school administrators and policymakers is how do we ensure that they get visibility into all those different lenses, especially as the teachers are really trying to look for like, okay, tell me the one thing, because this year is crazy and next year is going to be crazier. What's the one thing I have to do in order to get this through?
I love that this panel almost barely needs a moderator, because we've really moved into what I think was my next question sort of seamlessly. So how do we ensure that we are reaching historically marginalized students? I think we've touched on some of that already. I really appreciate, Jessica, your advice about how we should not just sort of lump this with math or CS and fall into the hole that we might around negative perception there. But how do we reach historically marginalized students? And, you know, I think we all have already acknowledged how that is important and why it's important, but what would be a strategy, or what is your strategy, or what are the strategies you would recommend as we think about sort of just doubling down on that point that we've already started to address?
Jessica, I think she went, oh, yeah.
So there's no silver bullet as well. As I think that's just still the difficult question, is how to. And I can't speak for everyone in every culture, because I don't know everyone in every culture. I can only speak for the cultures that I live in, the communities that I understand, I'm brought up in. I have lived experience and book experience in, so a little bit of both. So with that being said, when I look at it, and I guess that's what made me come to Tableau, is I always tell them, use me as a vessel, because I do really strongly believe in this. As a matter of fact, what made me really is I've always been in love with data as it is. However, I am one of those, when we're talking about people not being in the programs, I am that person. Back, you know, I'm not going to tell my age, umpteenth years ago though, when data science programs were very new, they said you had to have calculus. I was working on the second master's and I couldn't even get into a data science program. I was working at school districts as a data consultant and could not get into a data science program. However, I do know, I'm in Illinois, that I did find a mentor who is now the director of research and evaluation at Illinois State Board of Education, the first Black woman. I went to her and I said, can you please mentor me? I love data and I'm really interested in that. Would you be willing? And I was what I consider an equity hire, not an affirmative action hire. I was an equity hire, meaning that I did not have the experiences or achievements, but I did have the capabilities. What she saw is potential. And again, I feel bad for the million of candidates who did have it, but what I did say that she saw in me was that I was driven and I wanted to learn, and that she was willing to take up that slack to teach. The reason I'm telling that story is simply because sometimes people don't have the credentials that are on a resume, but what's not there is heart and the fact that they want to. And they may be in communities where that is not always allowed. If you look at the Office of Civil Rights Data, which is fairly old now, but when you look at the Office of Civil Rights Data, you will see calculus, that there's a huge underrepresentation in calculus and statistics. And there's a reason for that. So again, when I'm looking at underrepresented communities, even with Tableau, what I do talk to universities about is find students that look like them to help mentor. Please don't go into communities and say, here, I'm the golden ticket to tell you how to do better with you. You know what I mean? If anything, empower, inspire, and let them tell you what they're interested in. They have interest. We have interest. Let us tell you what it is and teach us how to fish and get the resources to be able to leverage whatever research or values that we feel are important. So again, I don't have a silver bullet for that, but I have seen where that works. I've seen where having people genuinely, authentically come and say, hey, I would love to learn what you're interested in, because as we talked about, if we're seriously saying that data is everywhere, then there shouldn't really be anything that people aren't interested in. So it doesn't make sense to me that we're saying, how do we get in to teach data science? Data is everywhere. It's part of everything. So there is that connection. I think, again, it goes back to our approach and how we're coming at it. I think also, I'm gonna be honest, we have to look at how we do business. I was having with NAACP, I was having a philosophical conversation with someone in Illinois about the group. And it was a professor, I want to give credit where credit due, a professor from U of I spoke on the fact that all of these entities are saying, let's go into these communities and start giving them, you know, prerequisite skills, like so they can go into the college and be ready, or into the course and be ready. But that teacher was like, you're actually exacerbating an issue that already was there. And I was like, whoa. I just really was kind of more like, wow, I didn't really think about that, because she said, what you're doing is you're telling the students already psychologically, and I am a psychologist, so that's where I love that, is that you're telling them that they're not prepared, as opposed to, hey, as a teacher, I will prepare everyone, and I will differentiate instruction, and I will give you the resources day one when you start, as opposed to already in that mindset that, hey, you're not ready yet, so I'm going to give you some extra work in the summer or in other times. And I never thought about that until I thought about my own experiences at Chicago Public Schools and being pulled out for interventions and wondering, why? Am I not good enough? That helped, that kind of accelerates some of that imposter syndrome. And then guess what it does also, especially if you're pulling out for math or sciences, guess what all of my students tell me as soon as I walk into a statistics class teaching psychology, research method, I'm not good at math. And I'm like, here you go. You didn't even start day one yet, and you're already telling me you're not there. So again, that is some of the anecdotes, but I think we're all living that, is that, again, just being human and seeing people and meeting them at their level.
Of course, I agree with Jessica, but I want to get back to the original question as well, Katie. And again, to follow up on 2 points that Jessica brought up, that kids at a really early age already are saying they don't like math when, so basically I'm trying to do the intervention so you don't get to middle school or high school. We lose a lot of underrepresented students in middle school, if not earlier. I actually was very fortunate to have been in a program that exposed me to engineers at the time, and I didn't know what an engineer was. So really these students have to see it. So communities of color have to see themselves in these fields. But like I said, besides, again, I keep going back to the career fields, but it's beyond that. You don't have to be in a STEM field, as Trina and even Jessica mentioned, to appreciate and have this background in data science that's going to be so critical. So two things, like I said, even 5-year-olds already are saying this, and it's not really 5-year-olds speaking, it's parents. So I want to say that one is we often pass on our own negative feelings about a topic. And so we really have to, one, bring the parents along at a really early age. I know in my own community in Pasadena, I was horrified to learn that the math gap starts in kindergarten for our African-American students, which is awful. And so we really have to start early to get them comfortable. And as much as we don't want to say math with data science, because people just are going to make that correlation between math and data science because you're seeing numbers, but then really what does these numbers mean? That it's the visualization of this large set of data that's being collected about us, and then decisions are being made. So one is, again, starting early to make sure that we capture these underrepresented students as early as possible, and then making data science, again, because it's everywhere. As Leah mentioned, we can learn about gardening, the environment, social justice issues, and data is there to help solve problems, and again, making it relatable to them. How does it affect you? And then to make sure that they understand that, yeah, you don't need calculus, you don't need to be great at math, and you can still work in data science. It's about visualizing and telling stories and representing what this large data set means. So.
And just to build on that, again, it's brought up about how important pre-K and early childhood are. And I think one of the things that was also alluded to is how we need to partner with our communities and our parents and our families in this messaging and the understanding of what data science is, mathematics, statistics, because there's mathematics and data science, there's statistics and data science, but that's not all data science is, as was brought out, all right? But there are parts, but also mathematics is not only data science, it's other things as well. So I think these are things that we need to start early on to really get children, young children and families to understand, and communities to understand the importance of data science and understanding it, because it is, while it is important for thinking about the economy and thinking about the job market, et cetera, it's critical for that, but it's also critical just as individuals in our society, and that even young children have an understanding of this, and we want that to be the positive kind of message to help them to understand and develop we talk about a positive math identity. I think about this as a positive data science identity, that it is a positive identity, that you are in this space, each and every student. And your other comment earlier about, the responsibility and role of a classroom teacher is meeting students where they are and developing them all as students who have a voice in this, have an opportunity in this, and that they are all capable. All right. We just need to frame it that way and offer the supports as well.
Yeah. You brought up a really important point about parents and communities, and Karina, I think you also touched on this in part in what we need to help parents and caregivers not do, is impart some of the negativity that we might have around math. But in terms of other messages about data science, and Leanne, I know, we've done work on messaging computer science in the past to parents and what that looks like. So I'm curious to hear from you all about your thoughts on what that message to parents needs to be, and how we bring parents along in this, and parents from all backgrounds, and make them aware of sort of the problem, the need, and get them involved in the solution.
Yeah, Katie, I think there is something so ingrained in our society that allows us to, you have a first grader come home from school and say to his parent or her parent, I don't like to read. And the first thing that parent is going to do is going to be like, nope, we're going to the library. We're going to get a book. We're going to start reading at night before bedtime every single night, and it's going to be a thing. Same first grader comes home to the same parents and says, I don't like math. And the response is, that's okay, I didn't like it either. Right? That permissiveness. There's an amazing study that was done where they surveyed over 1,000 parents at the Kansas-Missouri border. And they asked them, how important is it that we have scientists in society? This was about a decade ago, right? And they asked, and about 80% of the parents said, oh, yeah, we need scientists. I want to know about the 20% who said we don't need scientists, but 80% of them said, yes, we need scientists in society. That's very important. How important is it that your child take science, right? 20% of parents said it's important that their own child take science. And the title of the study is Important, but Not for Me. And I worry that as we are messaging computer science, data science, all of these things, that there's a little bit of important, but not for me. And the parents are making the decision that it's not for me, or my kid is not that type of kid, missing out on the breadth of art that's necessary to do high quality data science. Tableau produces some of the most beautiful things on the internet. And it's art, right? And so how can we help get over the not for me that projects onto their children as a part of that? And so at CS for All, when we work with school districts, we also believe in working with the community. How do we help not only the parents, but in many of the marginalized communities, Katie, that you asked about, how do we help sure we reach, that the parents are not the only brokers of students' educational experience, right? It is dependent upon the teachers, the guidance counselors, but also the out of school time providers, the after school care, the before school care, the church on Sundays, the community center, the rec center. all of those places. When we launched CS for All in New York City, we brought all of those community members together. And we saw that because they put value on what computing could do for their communities within the larger city, the parents started to put value on that. And when the school district started to message those positive messages, they were receptive to it because the parents themselves trust those community brokers to be the ones who can help guide. My dad was a truck driver. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. And so they trusted the messages that came to them from sources, whether it was our church or our school. And so how do we get the parents ready to trust that this isn't just a message from the tech companies who are trying to make more money, that this isn't just somehow an elitist notion that they're trying to scoop out the 1%, right? So we have to build that strong foundation that it's for everyone, that there is no not for me option, and that it really will have significant impact. And it would have had significant impact on them if they had had access to a high quality education that made those concepts accessible to them while they were learning.
And Leanne, I would add to that, we have the opportunity to engage parents and families in data science now. We've seen this in mathematics where we bring them in and we actually engage in doing mathematics. Well, we need to do that with data science and with mathematics and statistics and all the components, computer science, et cetera, that go with it, so that they see themselves in that space, that they see why it's valuable, what is important about it. Many of them, I think for some who say, okay, well, I never had statistics, so I can't do data science, okay? And that's not true, as you've all brought out. It is in our face every day right now, okay? And now more than ever, we know how valuable it is. And I think one strategy, if I had to name something, you talked about bringing in all of the partners, so critical, and then engaging parents, families, communities in the doing of data science, addressing community concerns and issues that might be happening so that it's relevant, and decision making, and just even interpreting what's in the newspaper. I think there's just so many powerful things that we could do together. And I loved your informal spaces because it's not about what happens in the classroom walls and during that time. It is much bigger than that. I also thought about libraries, how we could engage with libraries as well, because there's so many in communities, not everywhere, but it's just one. So.
And with that, sorry, just to follow up on Trina, with the data, something that, we've talked about this data literacy. The other important piece is that with data, people can also produce negative or false results, and how important it is for us to be aware of when data is represented correctly and not. So for me, that's one big piece. And something that woke me up was also just seeing how these decisions are made in the case of recidivism, the likelihood of somebody recommitting a crime, and how, because we have all this, unfortunately, because of our justice system, biased data, what those decisions look like for people of color. And so to understand when these decisions are being made, and the really the negative and sometimes life-changing negative decisions that can be made, and how now, because again, I bringing it back to AI, but how, we are all now very familiar with face recognition, but it doesn't always work, obviously, for people of color. And so again, that's where I look at, you talked about risk, the risk also in not being literate in data science, to understand how decisions are being made, I think is very important. So.
As we come to the last sort of 10 minutes, I want to remind people watching that they can use the Q&A function. As we come to the final piece of this, we'll integrate some audience questions into our last answers. Jessica, go ahead.
Mine is more of a challenge than anything because I don't have the answer. I've been pondering a lot. I've been reading a lot of books lately. One of them is Race After Technology. But I don't think that data science isn't already in historically marginalized communities. I think it already is. I think they're already doing it, and they, meaning me, like I think we already, and I think it just looks differently. So example being at my grandmother's table and family's table, when we talk about research and data, I remember telling people, hey, they said whatever, and guess what grandma would say? Who is they? And so to answer your question to how do we reach, I think it's already there. I think that maybe mind shift a little bit, and not for the community, for us in academia, for us as educators. I think it's us changing our language and meeting that is a huge thing for me. It's just my personal opinion in it, because I think it's there. As a psychology professor, and I'm teaching every semester, you're saying how to reach underrepresented students is, again, argumentation and critical thinking. When I read a data set to them, I question that. Who did this? Why? And then I challenge them. You don't agree with it? You do it. You do the research. You do the work. And I let them know that when they're like, well, I'm interested, and they do what I did, the mistake I did is, I'm interested in data science, but I don't have math. Go for it anyway. What can I do to walk? Let me walk you down to the next office. How about that? To talk to the advisor or the administrator. Can I go to bat for you to help you get into this door and whatever it is that you want to do? And I'll leave it there. But I guess that's my big thing is, as opposed to saying like, how do we reach this under marginalized or this marginalized community? I would say, how do we partner with them? They're already doing it. They're data scientists more than you already know. As I stated, culturally in my community, we always start with data, because that's how we actually get our voices elevated. Because for whatever reason in my community, lived experience doesn't always work when I'm talking to people outside of my community. So we have been doing it since pre-K. But how do we then match that, and how do we elevate that? So again, mine is more of a challenge, and I'll stop there.
No, I think that's a really important point, and I have often said that we should all be mindful of the fact that there's no such thing as an unbiased data set. Even the choice you make about what data you are collecting is in and of itself, and how you collect it is in and of itself a form of bias. And bias doesn't have to equal bad, but it has to be recognized, understood, so that it can be integrated into the outcomes and the things that you produce with that data. I think that actually is a bit of a segue into one of our first questions in the Q&A, which brings us back to the definition of data. And so from Valerie, a point of clarity: when we say data, do we define that as all types of information sources, data inclusive of audio, video, content, etc.? If we don't, in my opinion, we are approaching this too narrowly with modern times. For example, data science now includes natural language processing of text. So coming back to our definition, if anyone has a perspective on what we are including when we say data.
Yeah, so Katie, yes to all the above.
Yes.
So, you know, I have a degree in computer science. My PhD is in computer science, and you're dealing with way more than just numbers, right? You're dealing with everything from text to numbers to metadata to all kinds of different information. And that's why that translation step was such an important piece that we wrote into standards. And there's a middle school concept about representation, that even when we're representing colors as RGB values in a computer, computers turn everything into a representation. And how we choose a representation can make something either accurate or not, or biased or not. And then how we choose to take the sum total of those representations and combine them into something that people can perceive also, again, is a secondary choice that can hide even sometimes an original intentionality for exclusion. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do, but yes to all types of data. And I think it's a beautiful thing to let students explore representation, for example, as one way that data science really lets us combine our left and right brains together and bring the art and the science hand in hand.
And I think it helps us to more fully understand whatever the phenomena is, or the question that we're exploring, that we're not limited to numeric data, so to speak, but there are many, many, many types of data that are so important today. And because of technology, we have access to even more types of representations than probably we ever have. And that's only going to grow. That's only going to change. And that's something else for us to think about. How do we continuously evolve around the idea of what data is? So it's an excellent point, excellent question. And Leanne, great job in responding. Yes to all of them.
Agree.
Thank you. I want to jump to a highly practical question that I really appreciate the wording of. What's the sale for teachers? This is from Eric in the audience. I agree with a lot of what's been discussed, but from what I've heard, most public school teachers especially are already overextended and underpaid. So how do we implement these needed changes?
I'm not an educator, so I'll answer first because I think my answer will be shortest, but I think engagement, I think that's one of the things that we can offer. Especially now in this virtual environment that we saw in the last year with COVID, I believe using AI and data science will bring really engaging lessons and curriculum. I love AI in education because it allows you to teach the same lesson, but on different topics. So you can choose, this is your lesson plan, but you can, again, apply it as it would apply to gardening, sports, a social issue, the environment. And so that's where I think that this is a sell to teachers that, and of course, we all benefit from having an educated society, and everybody needs data literacy, data science literacy. So
I think it pushes us there again with the collaboration and the connections, just like what you were just saying. This is an opportunity for pre-K through 12 educators to collaborate with each other across disciplines, not just within a particular discipline, but across. And I think there's also that space for problem-based learning, ways of collaborating and making connections. And I think that's where the power, rather than seeing as something else to add on to what I already have to do as a classroom teacher, it is an integral part of what we do as teachers. Okay, and we have opportunities to make those connections so that students don't see, well, we study science from 12 to 12:30, then we study math from 12:30 to 12, whatever, 1:30 or whatever it happens to be, and we have it segmented. But instead, it's a more integrated, interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary approach to thinking about education.
I would actually say all of the reasons we're saying are from our value perspective and point of view, right? It's engaging, it's everywhere. Like, these are our perspectives. And I think one of the things, if we're talking about a sell for teachers, we have to think about their perspective. Their days are finite. They have a set of things that they must, by law in many places, accomplish by the end of the year. And if we add to that plate, it doesn't matter how good we make them feel about adding to the plate gets heavier. So there is a commitment maker here for data science for everyone, as well as a very active member of CS for All called Bootstrap. And what Bootstrap has done is really looked at, how do I satisfy the mathematics standards that are in place, the things the teacher already has to do, with computer science or data science content. And so if we want to sell this to teachers, we can't convince them that it's good for them that they should eat their vegetables. We actually have to make it into the nutritional meal that they need to serve students wholeheartedly. And it's not just true for math, it's true for everything in education. As we've been talking about computer science education across the country, we use something called our Visions quiz that allows school districts and leaders to say, why is education important for students in my building? And then think about choosing an implementation of computer science education that meets those goals. If their goals are about literacy, then how does computer science education contribute to those goals? If their goals are about workforce development, then what is the right computer science pathway to do that? If their goals for education is to build good citizens who enjoy learning, then what does the educational pathway look like for that? And the beautiful thing about this nation and the fact that we do have locally distributed education systems is that we don't have to all eat the same flavor of ice cream every day. Our local communities can decide what they need and choose implementations that work for them. So we need sports examples. We need things that will integrate into our math classrooms and satisfy those learning standards. We need work with art teachers, and we need to make it so that we are bringing to them something that solves a problem they already have, as opposed to adding one more thing to their plate because the world is changing.
I think that is a really serendipitously great note to end on. I think we are out of time, and I really want to say thank you to all of our panelists. I know there are some questions that we didn't get to address, additional practical questions about the resources and the ways that we can teach this. And so I hope that folks will stay tuned, and will stay tuned to, I think, all of this work more broadly, because part of the point here is to bring those resources, that activation to the community so that we can achieve that goal of data science for everyone. So thank you all again, and thank you for the questions and the attention from the audience. And I think I will send it back to Kumar.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie.
Amazing. And thank you for what an incredible panel. What jumped out to me is just this idea that there's a ton to learn from that might already be happening. And this idea that even as we want to do a lot more, how do we build from those strengths? This is, I would say this is an ambitious but also long program. So we also want to give everybody stretch breaks. So we have one of those now in the program. So if what I wanted to do is give everybody just 5 minutes. I think this is. I think this is off. This says 1:37 p.m., but actually it is 1:27 p.m. So I want to give everybody 5 minutes to stretch, run to the bathroom, grab lunch as I did during the panel break, or anything else, and to quickly run back. So this is actually 1:27 p.m. Eastern time, not 1:37. And we'll restart in 5 minutes. And then next up, we'll be having Steve Levitt and Julia Quinn kick off with our first batch of commitment videos, which are pretty fun, as well as a little bit of what we're trying to accomplish with commitments. And then we'll get some administration voices from the administration, the Biden administration coming in. So lots of great stuff planned. If folks can be back in 5 minutes. Thanks.
Thanks, Kumar. I think we're done, right? So
We are, yeah. This is we just gave everyone a quick break, but thank you so much for joining us.
of course, thank you for having me, and thank you, Katie, for being panelists, and Jessica, great to meet you, and Trina and Leah. Leah, I know we've crossed paths before, I think with TRA.
I think Karina, they're being I think
Muted.
it
Nope.
live broadcast onto the thing. So
Okay.
Hi, everybody. So welcome back. That was the world's shortest break, but hopefully you used it well. And I wanted to, reflect on where we are. So what I really loved about the kickoff was we got a range of perspectives, but all with this fierce sense of real urgency about the moment and what we need to do right by our kids, but also the sense that all our children are different, and we actually need to think about a variety of responses and how much and there's not one size fits all. And so that actually sets us up well for, well, why are we doing a commitments showcase anyway? Why have a all hands on deck effort that brings together so many different things? Why shouldn't we just scale one particular idea for everybody? And so to next, maybe we should have done this at the top, but we actually wanted to start off with the why and create some context to now go into our next, which is I wanted to invite Julia Quinn from Citadel. Julia has been a real leader in helping build this coalition, along with Steve Levitt of both Freakonomics fame, but also creator of the Risk Center at University of Chicago. And Steve's, I wouldn't say Steve was first to this, but like Steve sort of like aw shucks advocacy. I mean, like, why doesn't this make sense to me when I think about my own kids and how I use data science, has I also think really galvanized the field. So I'd love to invite them both to the stage to talk a little bit about their personal motivations about this topic, but also a little bit about the commitments model, and then we'll roll right into videos. Steve and Julia.
Great, thank you, Kumar. Julia, I'll go first, maybe. So first, a huge thank you to our first panel and to Eric and First Lady Northam. I really resonated with what Eric said. It's data science is everything. I mean, it's like data science is the future, and you just can't ignore it. It's just coming, and whether it hits us like a train or whether we jump on board and ride it. I think those are our two choices. And First Lady Northam, I thought was really interesting because she really talked about how she brought it into her own classrooms of kids at every age. I think that's something that many people don't understand, is that data science is nuanced and you can teach it from every stage up. So in addition to a schedule that's jam-packed with great content today, we have two other goals of what we're trying to accomplish. The first is we are here to celebrate you, to celebrate us, to celebrate the commitments, the 272 commitments. When Kumar and Ulrich came to me with that day of a commitment conference, I was silently skeptical, and I really feared that when June 28th rolled around, it was going to be a three-way call with me and Ulrich and Kumar looking at wounds. And when we hit 50 commitments, I thought, wow, that's crazy. 100 crazy, but 272 is I've been convinced of the brilliance of what the Learning Agency and what Kumar at Schmidt Futures of the ability to harness the power of movements. And it's just been fantastic. I've learned so much from that. Finally, the other thing we want to do today is we want to launch the next phase of the Data Science for Everyone Coalition. This is just the beginning. But even though it's just the beginning, a big group of folks have been working on this for 2 years. And Data Science for Everyone's incubated at the little center, Risk Center that we have at the University of Chicago. And it's funded generously by Ken Griffin, philanthropist and founder and CEO of Citadel, Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Futures, and also the Siegel Family Foundation. So look, I'll talk more about the next phase and what's going on, but I gotta say, I'm just super excited to be one little teeny tiny part of it. And let me hand it over to Julia to get us on to what comes next.
Great, thanks so much, Steve. And we at Citadel and through Ken Griffin are also very excited to be another small part of this, and have been enormously grateful to you and your team, the Learning Agency team, Kumar and the team at Schmidt Futures, and everyone who has stepped forward and put together a commitment over the last few months of this campaign. So thank you all around. Today we are going to be highlighting many of the commitments that have come in over the course of the last few months. The campaign has been a wild success to date, and we'll have a chance to see videos from some of the partner organizations describing their commitments and the impact on data science education. The videos that we'll see today are just a very small sample of the very diverse and community-driven commitments that have poured in since we kicked this off. And I think first up, we'll hear from a couple of organizations, including TUVA, King Chavez Community High School, Generation STEAM, San Diego Unified School District, and the Data Lodge, about the impacts of their commitments. And we hope that these videos and this event today will inspire your work, will catalyze new connections among everyone here, and will help drive forward the great work that's already happening in data science education to bring more progress than we could have ever imagined over the coming months and years. So huge thank you. I think we're going to launch right into videos now, and let's see if you have anything else before that.
That's great.
Hi, I'm Silvana Del Piccolo with Generation STEAM, part of Biocom California. We are committed to increasing the visibility of data science careers and professionals by summer of 2022. We'll do this through our San Diego Festival of Science and Engineering and our year-round programs, including Women in STEAM.
Illumina runs on data, so data literacy is becoming an increasingly important skill. Generation STEAM's programs will give us an opportunity to start these conversations with students at a much younger age.
Thank you, Generation STEAM and Data Science for Everyone, for helping me prepare for my future.
Hi there, my name is Herschel Parikh, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of TUVA. At TUVA, we have been working with teachers, schools, and districts across the country and around the globe to catalyze the teaching, learning, and assessment of data literacy in K-12 education. Today, teachers in over 18,000 schools and districts are using TUVA as part of their math and science education. Based on our experience, we firmly believe that in order to make data literacy education a reality in our classrooms, students need access to powerful digital learning tools that will make the act of exploring, manipulating, visualizing, and analyzing data a fun and engaging experience for them. Today, we're honored to make a commitment to make the TUVA tools accessible for all students, including those that have various cognitive or physical disabilities. Learn more about our work at TUVA by visiting tuvalabs.com. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Edith Ortiz, and I'm a math teacher at King Chavez Community High School. My commitment statement is, the Intro to Data Science classes at King Chavez Community High School commit to embarking on a data science exploration, where students will ask questions, collect data, analyze findings, and communicate them by June 2022. I want my commitment to empower my students to be active in their communities and create a positive change based on a need they discover while analyzing data. I want my students to see that data can aid in creating social change and that they are capable of being the ones leading that change.
The San Diego Unified School District commits to offering data science courses to grades 11 and 12 in the 2020-21 school year, to implementing introductory mathematical modeling using data science in grades 6 through 10 in the 21-22 school year, and expanding to pre-K-5 in the 22-23 school year. We will design and implement professional learning opportunities for educators and administrators, foster family outreach, design curriculum, and align the work to post-secondary education expectations. In doing these things, the district can offer multiple pathways towards college and career readiness, specifically ones that open access to rich and relevant mathematics courses. And we can widen the sphere of success for each and every one of our students. We wish to have our students leaving us feeling empowered to use a variety of tools, including mathematics, data science, and their existing sociocultural assets to make a lasting positive impact on their communities and the world.
At the Data Lodge, we're all in on data literacy, and we've been training the world's first certified data literacy program leaders for the last 2 years across companies and government agencies, and it's a great privilege to do this work. So we've been using an approach that we call ISL, information as a second language. And when we heard about data science for everyone, we knew we had to get involved. So we are committing to supporting DSE and the coalition on the scoping and of the data literacy strategy that underpins DSE. And we believe data literacy is a work skill and a life skill for everyone.
Amazing. What I sort of love about the videos is just that, they capture people in the midst of their work and setting these sort of powerful goals. And, as I sort of flagged at the top, this is our first commitments conference, but not our last one. We're going to have another one, full-blown one in the spring, but lots of things along the way. So if when you're watching this, you're like, ooh, I've got something I want to, sort of commit to. And part of the goal, I was involved in a lot of commitments efforts, when I was in the Obama White House. We took this idea liberally from the Clinton Global Initiative, which is, the mantra was new, specific, and measurable. And at the time when I first interacted, how does the model actually work? And they said, well, so often it's hard to coordinate many people around a particular activity. But if you sort of give them a deadline and say, think aspirationally about what you can commit with this deadline, it both helps them structure their own work against that goal, but also it helps them recruit partners, recruit funders, recruit others. And it also creates a moment for celebration, which is what today is, to say, here's all these amazing organizations who are stepping up. So I hope you check out the commitments page that we have live on the Data Science for Everyone website. It shows all 272 commitments, how they add up to 3 million kids who'll get these opportunities across 500 school districts. And think about, if you read something and you're like, ooh, I want to work with them, I think we're eager to connect to you. If you say, oh, I've got something to add, I think we want to help. And we want to help even this is the beginning. And we want to help make sure that, we're helping the commitment makers achieve their goals, think bigger, even get the work done. None of the announcement is not the end of it, but it's actually the beginning. So I wanted to also just, as folks are sort of checking out that page, I also wanted to just sort of add a few more that have come in that aren't videos, but just, I think, exciting. So one of them is from the folks at NWEA, which are where, the map assessment, a number of other things come from. And so what NWEA is doing is they're committing to creating and supporting a data science challenge for high school students in the 21-22 academic year. And then making sure that they're using their organizational capacity, including their mentors and judging, and eventually hosting an in-person or virtual awards event for what comes out of it. And I'll give one more, and then we'll have our next speaker, which is the Utah State Board of Education is committing to beta testing a micro-credential for teachers. This is one that Eric had talked about this morning. But I wanted to just sort of add that, this has the potential to actually serve 41 different school districts, serving more than 600,000 students once it's fully operational. So just incredibly exciting. And we're going to keep sprinkling these announcements here and create lots of opportunities for the rest of the year. So next up, we have something I'm pretty excited about. We have Nafisa Owens, who recently started at the White House Office of Science and Tech Policy. Nafisa is going to be helping direct STEM education policy for the Biden administration. Now, this is a role I know well because it's one of the chairs I occupied inside the Obama administration. And I'll just say that, these are hard jobs, and I always appreciated how much the community really picked me up and said, here's all the things that we're working on. Here's how we can help. Here's how we need your help. And I know how busy these jobs are and how much Nafisa has on her plate. But, Nafisa's actually been doing STEM education for a number of years at the National Science Foundation before she went on detail to OSTP. So, she knows a ton about this already, having done all of this. And I'm thrilled to have her join us and to say a little bit about what her priorities are, priorities of administration, ways that she would love to be working with this community. And then maybe I'll throw in a question or two after she speaks for a few minutes. So Nafisa?
So hi, Kumar. I just recently lost power, so I hope you guys are able to hear me. I'm using my, taking full advantage of technology. But again, very happy to be here today. Yes, a new assistant director for STEM education at OSTP, also serving as a senior policy advisor within the National Science and Technology Council. And really excited about the work that is ahead of me. I am joining OSTP under our new inaugural Deputy Director for Science and Society, Alondra Nelson. She is a renowned social scientist and distinguished scholar on race and social equities in STEM. And so I'm privileged and honored to be a member of her team. And then also I am working under the leadership of our new recently confirmed OSTP director, Eric Lander. And so as many know, he's a world-renowned mathematician and geneticist. And so no stranger to OSTP, having served as a co-chair to the PCAST, or the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology Policy, but also, and during the Obama administration, I should say, but also, OSTP's mission is to maximize the benefits of science and technology to advance health, prosperity, security, environmental quality, and justice for all Americans. And so we have no greater champion to this work than Eric. On his very first day, he noted, that we need to draw on all of our assets to accomplish this mission, chief among them being diversity, noting that we really need to pull all Americans in to participate in this so that all of them can benefit from this. And so, equity and access is an essential message to the Biden and Harris administration, evident on the first day when the president signed his executive order on advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. This executive order was calling on departments and agencies to recognize and work to address inequities in policies and programs that were serving as barriers to equal opportunity. And then likewise, actually just this past Friday, there's a new executive order that was released. And that one speaks on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility within the federal workforce. This is another example of where we are trying to advance equity, civil rights, racial equity, racial justice, and equal opportunity as a whole of government approach and effort. That order in particular focuses on the federal workforce and how it needs to draw from the full diversity of our nation. So as an African-American female who herself is differently abled, I am not only proud to reflect the diversity of our nation through this administration's workforce, but I can personally say there's nothing more important to me than equity, access, diversity, and inclusion in all areas of education and in our STEM workforce. I'm excited to see efforts such as data science for all. And I'm also very excited to see other federal agencies who are on this call and participating in this event today, really to support STEM initiatives that broaden our reach and increase opportunities for STEM talent. So I know I'm only to speak for a couple of minutes, but just want to say again, really excited to hear about the innovative ways that folks are, connecting with today's learners, but also tomorrow's workers, and definitely look forward to opportunities to connect in the future as I welcome suggestions and ideas from everyone always.
Nafisa, you also get points for resilience for being able to call in the midst of a power outage. If you could indulge a few questions, I might. I think one question I always think is, I have found this is a community that's really rare to go. A lot of people think that data science is going to be really important to equity, partly because of what we had a previous panel where they said, if we're going to make sure that data doesn't happen at people, we have to really empower them to be active citizens who can work with data. And, the COVID crisis and everything else really suggests that this is a public policy issue of the day. I'd be curious, as you're thinking about your work, are there things that you would love for the community to be reaching out to you on, either things that are working, things that are not working, ideas for where the federal government could lead, agencies to pull in, or other things? Not that you have like one pre-built answer, but what what would be kind of ways that you would love to be sort of getting input? And obviously we'll work with you on making sure it doesn't come in as a flood, but are there things that would be helpful?
I think one of the things that resonates with me, and I think is a reflection of the first executive order that came out, particularly that talks about equitable data, is how we ensure that those who benefit from data are engaged in the process of that collection and its use. And so as we are engaging with the community, how are the ways that people are successfully engaging with the community? How are people, or what are people needing, to get out of the data? And how can the government support better use and collection of such data?
That's great. I think the other aspect of this is, we obviously have some agencies involved. So we'll have speakers from the National Science Foundation. Obviously we have OSTP. But I actually think this is a thing that might actually benefit from a lot of agencies, because a lot of them are data creators, a lot of them work with a lot. And you've been involved for a number of years with COSTEM and a number of the federal interagency groups. What's your sense on federal partners or others that we should be pulling into this work around how to give students more access to live information around this question around data citizenship and other things? Are there federal partners that we should be thinking more actively about?
I would say definitely, OPM is leading the charge when it comes to the equitable data work. And then I would say, there are so many agencies that are engaged in this effort, particularly the agencies who have been noted as part of the executive order, particularly those who are invested in understanding how data is captured and how it connects to the communities that it serves. I think those would probably be the starting points, as well as likely, at the federal agencies that are part of COSTEM, given, those I think speak to ones that not only use data, create data, but working with researchers and the grants that they receive with the creation of so much data.
That's great. And I think the last thing I would sort of say is, we talked a little bit about how can people engage with you, a little bit about who else is involved. The other one would be, you and I have had some great conversations around things that when you think about, you're like, these are things that not worry you, but like things as folks who are trying to build excellent programs or build the work, things that you want them to keep in mind as you sort of think about how to build effective programs. You're an expert in this area. You did a lot of this work at NSF. What are things that you would sort of have as like things to sort of think about that are advice back out to the field for how to do this in a way that's impactful, equitable, and really delivers on the ground? What might be some things that at least you've been wondering or worrying about?
I think one of the things that I think about is, when it comes to access, making sure that those who may not have all the resources have access to the information that they need in order to advance their education or advance their knowledge. But also with an understanding that not everyone has the same access to technology, to internet, to resources, with time with teachers outside of the classroom. And so, when we think about the things that we're able to provide, definitely thinking about how not everyone is starting off at that same starting point. And when we think about the opportunities that students have in the classroom, that the same access doesn't always exist at home when they leave the classroom. And so that's something that I really spend quite a bit of time on. I see the advantages of technology in advancing our work, but for those who don't have such technology or limited access to technology, how are we making sure that they are not falling behind?
Yeah, I think this is such an important point because we're all captives of our own experience. And so sometimes we just don't know what hidden taxes are in the system. And we say, oh, I'm making this, one example I learned of this recently is, when people have college internships, they'll say, oh, you can fly out to the internship and then you can request a reimbursement for the travel costs. But actually, if you don't have the resources to actually pay for the trip, that actually is like a huge barrier for you to, you'll just get it reimbursed. And so why not pay for it in a prepaid debit card or something else? Which is like, when you think about it, then it makes all the sense in the world. But you can see how we have all these points where we don't see the problem because we may not encounter it, and then other times where we do. So, well, Nafisa, I know how busy you are, and on top of it, you lost power 2 minutes before you were supposed to join us. So this is immensely appreciated, and we're like both rooting for you and want to work with you on how do we expand this for more kids. So thank you again, and I know you probably have to run, but we'll definitely give you a report out on the meeting and next steps.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Kumar. Take care.
Awesome. So let me, we're gonna now roll into our next panel conversation, and to head that off. Part of, I think, the goal for this next panel is to think, especially as we sort of think about how to intersect the various commitments being made today together, but then also on what additional work to be done. What have been lessons learned with the work so far? And where can the work go, and what needs to happen? So we're going to have Chad Dorsey of the Concord Consortium be our moderator. And Chad, if you could introduce your panel and off you go.
By all means. Thanks so much, Kumar. It's so exciting to be part of this and to see this coming to fruition after years of work for planning on this particular event and really multiple years before that of building awareness. We're excited to have a great panel here of folks to look back a little bit at some of the lessons learned and to look ahead to think about the ways that we can build on both these commitments and what we all know for maximum impact. And we're really going to look at sort of what this looks like on the ground. So we have 4 experienced panelists here to talk about things from the sort of teacher, student, and system perspective. Joe Bowler is a Nominelli Olivier Professor of Mathematics Education at the Stanford Graduate School of Education and the co-founder and faculty director of U-Cubed. She's been involved in reform mathematics and equitable math, and lately in thinking about proponent of data science education across K-12 in great ways. So we're honored to have Joe here. Suyen Machado is the director of the Introduction to Data Science Curriculum project at UCLA's Center X. She's been a liaison to LAUSD for many years. She's seen this from inside and outside the classroom and between, and has been helping open teachers' eyes to things in great ways. Janet Coffey is the program director for science at the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. And she spent her whole professional career in science education and learning and thinking about data all across, as a learning scientist, as a middle school teacher, as part of the National Research Council, but especially at the Moore Foundation, looking at informal science education and cross-foundation work. And Moore's done a lot of thinking about data science proper, that Janet's been a part of. And then last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Louis Farabee, who is the Chancellor of DC Public Schools. Since 2018, and before that, done amazing things in other places in this superintendent role in Indianapolis Public Schools, driving turnaround and raising graduation rates, especially for Black and Hispanic students, as well as Chief of Staff at Durham Public Schools, Principal of the Year in Guilford County. So we have a great group of experienced folks who know what this looks like on the ground. And so in this panel, we're going to talk about that from a few different perspectives, from students, from teachers, and from the system perspective. I'll remind everybody out there that there is a Q&A section. Please put your questions as they come forward into that, because we'll leave some time at the end for panelists to respond to questions from all of you. So I'd like us to start by centering on students, where it really all matters in the first place. Eric Schmidt referred to the key role his own K-12 education played in setting him up for success in a world filled with data. So let's start by laying some groundwork. What do all learners need to take away from a high quality K-12 data science education? Joe, I know you've done a lot of work in thinking about this sort of as a pre-high school view. What do you see as important there?
Well, as so many people have shared today, data literacy is so important for our young people. And we know that our children right now are being shown a lot of misleading data images on social media, and they're not learning to approach them with questions or a really solid data-informed perspective. The math standards in schools currently do not help students develop data literacy. And so one of the things I want to highlight that's so important in the early years, and one of the wonderful additions from data science, is the range of creative data visualizations. Whereas the standards talk about bar charts and line graphs, we now know that students are being exposed to all sorts of really interesting data visualizations. Another really important part of the early years is multivariate thinking, not highlighted again in the current standards. And I did want to share that to help with both of these, we launched something on YouCubed last year, what we call data talks, where teachers, students get to look at data visuals and unpack them and really think about what they mean. And it's been amazing because hundreds of thousands of teachers have downloaded them and love them. So they're now starting classroom discussions by sharing really important topics with students. Great data visuals on climate change, on housing costs, on the value of education, on the important social issues that were raised earlier. And they're having wonderful conversations with each other, understanding multivariables, understanding what data visuals show. So a lot of excitement from teachers in that range of understanding these lovely new data visuals. And I think we really should capitalize on that in thinking about data science in the early years. In the middle grades, probabilistic thinking really comes to the fore, and that is an area we know that many teachers don't feel very comfortable with, which raises the teacher education idea. But I wanted to share that we're working on a new initiative with the people at risk, with Rob Gold, who is one of the authors of the IDS curriculum, to set out what are the big ideas in data science across the grades. I think this could be important for those states that are updating their standards. And we're really we're sharing as well rich tasks that satisfy these big ideas, which do highlight that data science is very rich with mathematics, but also science and literacy and social studies. So I'm excited to release that in a couple of weeks. But yeah, the big picture I would say is that the younger grade teachers are actually super excited about data science in their teaching, and we're very happy to see the uptake of data science in that sort of K-8 area. And I think CEN is going to add a lot of important.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So it's really important to see the uptake from K-5 and to bring that into the conversation. The previous panel, I think, mentioned that, having been the son of an elementary school teacher myself, and having worked with elementary school teachers in different prospects, they are some of the most inventive, creative, and powerful educators out there once you get them onto an idea. So I think you're exactly right. When we start to think about the later grades, Cian, you've done a lot of work with teachers in the later grades, especially through the IDS curriculum. What does it look like for students, for learners, to take things away from that education in a way that's high quality? What are they able to do once they've moved through some of those kinds of experiences?
Thanks, Chad. Yes. In our view, students must practice both statistical and computational thinking in the high school level. Statistical thinking encourages students to recognize and account for the role of variability in real life processes. and to consider uncertainty when expressing and interpreting findings. Statistical thinking is an essential idea or process in analyzing data. Computational thinking is also part of this notion of data science, and it allows students to design and write code to produce reproducible results, to automate analyses, to work with a variety of data types, and to think critically about the role of data and algorithms in our society and culture. This idea of variability is really, really difficult to understand for students, even in the later grades. Also, there are principles of data that our students need to know and understand. For example, one thing that is rarely thought about is this notion of data being messy. They must learn how to work with it. They must know how to clean data. And up until now, I don't think we have any courses that teach students that. We have courses where students are presented with a very clean data set that's perhaps 30 observations and a couple of variables, but that's it. In addition, students are in front of an ocean of data, and this notion of data moves is important when working with large data sets to make sense of the data in front of them. Like I said, they find themselves in a data deluge. So not only are today's citizens consuming data products, but also we need to be cognizant that this need to understand data must lead to producers as well, with the ultimate goal for students to see their world through the lens of data and become empowered with the skills to investigate it, to challenge it, to prove hypotheses. And because decisions in industry, government, education, and virtually all sectors of life are being driven by data, they need to know how to work critically with it, and it's now a necessity. So they must become efficient and proficient in asking questions, collecting and considering and interrogating the data, analyzing using statistical methods, visualizations, possibly inference using the power of computer software, and interpreting the data to make meaning of it. So fluent use of data has become a necessity for future success in both careers and citizenship.
That's powerful stuff. I think there are the proliferation of active verbs there tells its own story in its own right. The fact that it really means that students are able to not just observe data that's given to them, but do things with it themselves and be sort of active workers with the data. I think that's a powerful story. We heard from the previous panel a little bit about the different ways that happens. Is sort of naturally in different subject areas in life and in work and in school as well. Janet, I know you've thought a lot about this in the realm of, for example, science. So what is this? What is sort of the notion of being fluent with data in a K-12 trajectory? What does that look like when it's connected to other subjects in your view, and what's important about that?
Thank you, Chad. I think that as we think about ways that we can really support youth and others to develop not only the ability to make sense of data, but also a fluency and agency with data, we need to recognize, and I think Joe said this as well, that data literacy, fluency, data science is really cross-disciplinary. And so we can't just tackle it in a single subject area. And math, I think, is super important, but we also need to really be thinking about how to bring other subject matters to bear. So beyond a rich context for science, specifically exploration of data, science and scientific reasoning is really foundational for understanding data and its uses. And we know historically sometimes that the disconnect between what happens in a math class and what happens in a science class. And I think that those are real issues that we have to take seriously as we move forward with how to approach data science for all. And, I think we really need to ask these questions about how do we want students to be able to think about uncertainty, risk, probability, all areas and topics that come up and should come up in the science class also come up in the math class, maybe somewhat differently, but how can we work together to present an image of data science learning, so that what the different subject areas can bring to bear on the topic are real. There's a lot of synergies and can really strengthen what students take away and the skills and the mindsets that they have.
Thanks, Janet. That's really powerful, and I think it reminds me of the quote that sort of data are numbers with context, right? So there's, in any kind of framing of that, you need to think about both of those pieces. Joe, I know you did a lot of work with the California math frameworks, and I think you thought about context within that as well. Sort of at the same time, that has been one example that's highlighted data science as a sort of picture for people of what it looks like to come across an arc through the years and to gain the skills and competencies that are, and habits of mind that are necessary there. What did that bring to you in working with that, and what do you think is important to highlight?
Yeah, I am one of the 5 writers of the new proposed California Maths Framework. And as you say, Chad, we highlighted data science as a really important mathematical area, TK12, not presuming that other areas and other subjects don't come into data science, but it really could be a game changer for bringing mathematics into the 21st century. I think a number of people have highlighted how inequitable mathematics is, how we track most kids out of high-level math. So super excited for the equity implications. And one of the things we put out in the framework, and this was very much supported by the changes in the California college system, is that data science can be a great third-year math course for students. It is now allowable to take data science as an alternative to Algebra 2, which I think is wonderful, because Algebra 2 is really the end of the road for many students taking mathematics. And that's been sort of agreed in California. I can actually share that I've been working hard and have achieved Stanford changing its admissions statement. So that's going through the process at Stanford at the moment to add data science. So just a lot of what we're trying to propose in the framework is, let's give kids flexibility in their high school years, that they can choose data science and statistics as a pathway. I love the idea of different subject teachers teaching a data science course. We're rolling out a data science course from our own center and encouraging pairs of teachers to teach it, maybe maths and science, maths and CS. Literacy, social studies teachers could bring so much to a data science course. So I'm pretty excited about what's happening in California, and great to hear that parallel initiatives are going on in Virginia and other states around the country.
That's very exciting. So I want to turn to educators now, who are really the key channels to bring across these kinds of notions overall. The First Lady of Virginia spoke powerfully about the essential role of teachers in inspiring important topics. And there was a question in the last panel that nodded to the challenges of bringing this, something new into teaching. Dr. Farabee's seen a lot of this on the ground. I want to ask the question, how we support educators in teaching with data, and how do we start to, what are some of the challenges? What are the things that we need to recognize? I know you've been doing some of this with some partnerships as well. How do we do this for educators, and what do we need to think about?
So for us, there's 2 main priorities. First is to deepen the knowledge of our educators and the individuals that are supporting them. So we're very fortunate in the District of Columbia to have a partnership with American University. We have teachers enrolled in a graduate level course around data science as a cohort. And the goal for this cohort is to take these 30 teachers to be trailblazers for us, to deepen their knowledge of how to build and pilot a data science curriculum for the future, but also for these teachers to become mentors for others. For our DCPS math team, they're currently surveying potential data science curriculum options for us. We have a number of study groups in play to support our teachers. And we're really grateful for the work of panelists that have provided greater insight through UCube and IDS. And these are really strong platforms for us to begin to think about where we go next. But I want to go back to one of the points that were made earlier about this truly being a cross-curricular opportunity. I can't emphasize that more than what was mentioned earlier, because we are currently thinking about what this means for science and social studies. what this means for our sciences. And we want to explore different ways in which we can incorporate data science into, for example, we have new social studies standards in DC. As these standards are rolled out, we need to ensure that data science is embedded in it. And then we're also exploring ways to incorporate data science in our science topics as well. So inherently, again, we believe that our teachers need to be knowledgeable. Those that are supporting our teachers need to be very knowledgeable and utilize those tools and platforms that already exist, we know are deep, and then also continue to ensure that this is a cross-curricular effort.
That's great, and exciting to hear the notion that that you are seeing some of those revisions as opportunities for moving this forward. That I think when somebody mentioned modernized curriculum earlier, it chimed with me. I know there's a lot of good discussion about modernizing mathematics, which I think is important. It seems that that paradigm of modernizing curriculum might be something that can translate across to get more teachers into the fold thinking this as well. And to get some partnerships between people who are teachers of math and others also. There, on the opportunity and the challenge side, I think this can be threatening for teachers and it can be exciting for teachers. Suyan, you've done a lot of work with teachers, and I gather you've seen both sides of it. What's the trick? What are the important takeaways, to how to bring teachers to a place where we're building their knowledge and of the content, and also their knowledge of how to use that in the classroom effectively?
Yeah, Chad, we've been doing data science professional development since around 2012, with the first professional development for the Introduction to Data Science course in 2014. And as the NCTM president, Trina Wilkerson, mentioned this morning, there is a historical lack of teaching statistics. And we've seen that through our experience providing professional development in data science. Therefore, PD cannot assume that teachers are just getting either a data science refresher or even a statistics refresher. So the question becomes, how do we prepare teachers across all disciplines with content knowledge that was not necessarily part of their background and or teacher preparation, right? What is the role of technology in bringing teachers up to speed with what is being thought of as data science content nowadays, right? So working with data is like you said, nuanced, and it's also challenges, but it's a great opportunity to bring teachers up to speed. Another thing that in our experience, we've noticed is that data, whether collected by students or gathered or with gathered data sets, will inevitably involve difficult conversations that might involve social or personal issues. How do we prepare teachers for that, for those difficult conversations in the classroom, especially with math teachers who are not used to having those conversations in the classroom, whereas history or social studies teachers might a little more. So PD design must take this into account, where teachers engage in these difficult conversations themselves. Another overlooked need is preparing the teachers to work with the unknown. In our course and in our design, we have students engage in authentic data collection experiences through this notion of participatory sensing, where students use their mobile devices to collect data about their lives. And when students do this, then teachers must be prepared to work with the unknown, because every class collects their own data. Well, it's going to vary from class to class. The data set is going to vary from year to year. And so how do we prepare teachers for the unknown, right? Teaching the unknown. We're used to, as a teaching culture, and I include myself in that, having the answer key to everything in our teachers' guides, but we're changing the paradigm here. Another thing in professional development that is really needed is a professional development experience well-designed in immersing teachers in instructional strategies that are effective for student collaborative work. And in our experience, what we've seen is that teachers who come through our professional development and get these experiences, and not only are the experiences in professional development, but also part of the curriculum design itself, this starts spilling into the other areas that they teach. So a lot of these things need to be thought of when helping teachers navigate through this new content that we're calling data science.
Good perspectives, and it always reminds me of kind of how powerful it is to get teachers involved in something that's new, and how something that might seem threatening, as soon as people are engaged in it and realize that there's a new learning, a new conversation to be had, that can turn around. And I think that notion of data being something that's unpredictable, once teachers get a taste of the fact that that means that they're allowed to ask and answer questions themselves, they sometimes get pretty excited about that. So a very good point. I wanted to make sure that we are highlighting some of the pieces that are really most critical in all of this. And the one that we heard a lot about in the previous panel is always central to us in thinking about this too, which is sort of the question of equity and how it connects with data science. And I think this panel has some good expertise in what that looks like on the ground, both in terms of some of the barriers that exist in systemically currently, and the opportunities that data science provides for thinking that through in K-12. Joe, I know you've thought about this for many years. Where do you see data science being able to promote equity in education?
Such an important question, and I am really seeing data science as a game changer in challenging the horrible systemic inequities in mathematics over the years. For generations, we've really focused on calculus, and calculus, the system of getting to calculus, has been built on a structure that pushes most kids out of the calculus pathway, often in 6th grade, sometimes earlier. And it's amazing, really, that we've allowed that system to go on for so long. At the moment, in many school districts, there are 2 pathways in middle school. If you're not on the upper level pathway, you'll never get to calculus. And those pathway decisions are often based on data from 4th grade. So kind of amazing that we've decided which kids we're going to keep out of high level maths from early years onwards. So this is how data science changes that. As a high school option in year 3, for example, it does not require advancement in middle school. The reason calculus has been so inequitable is there are more courses in high school than you can get to unless you're advanced in middle school. Well, data science changes that. Any student can take a data science course, in my view. You don't have to have done well in algebra or geometry or previous mathematics. Yes, it reaches high levels. So it takes kids into STEM. They could follow it with statistics or other mathematics. And I think that's just going to break open the inequities we've had for so long, as well as the fact we know that diverse groups of kids are really engaged by data science. It's not a narrow subject. So it's extremely exciting for changing that mathematics system that I think in early panel discussions, we were hearing how bad maths has been for kids over the years and how many kids de-identify with maths. And I really see this as a way of changing that.
Thanks. That's great. And I think, it's far too easy to hear the word game changing as a trope adjective. I think in this case, you're right. Some of the conversations that I know I've been involved in have shown that there is an opportunity that truly could change the game for the system and for teachers in this regard. I think that's probably also the case for sort of our general view of this and for students. And Dr. Farabee, I know that DCPS has kind of changed its paradigm or that brought a paradigm that I think is powerful in thinking about data science, both as sort of an educational imperative and as a social skill. I was wondering if you could speak to that and the notion of kind of pathways as you see it playing out in DC.
Yeah, thank you. So as you've highlighted, we don't see this just as a educational imperative. We see data science as a social one. And when I describe that, what I'm referring to is this sense of empowerment that data science can provide to our students so that they can positively influence society and maximize their full potential. And we think that can be done through the levels of empowerment through data science. And we also believe that this is a way for us to fulfill our mission of ensuring that every student feels loved, challenged, and prepared. So for us, this is a social imperative, and we believe that this advances our equity agenda. We also believe that this forces us to think and rethink how we offer and the types of courses students take, even as low as our elementary grades going into high school, in terms of the prerequisite skills need to have this empowering experience and to move in their social justice interests. And so we believe that this is truly a play on equity, and all meaning all, and it's very much so aligned for our framework around equity, ensuring that our students are able to explore all areas of interest as well.
That's incredibly important. As a follow-on, as we start to think about this sort of as a system and how we are building a system, I'm wondering if you can speak to the question of sort of how we consider and engage all stakeholders. We heard in the previous panel notions of parents and communities being important. And also, I know that schools and districts are complex systems themselves. How do you see the importance of bringing in all stakeholders, and what do we need to be considering as we're thinking about that?
Yeah, so I think one of the ways that we can begin to lead this effort is, like I said earlier, is relying on our teachers and our support team to explore these topics with students and families, and to open the eyes of our students and our families of what's possible through the lens of data science. And of course, just not limiting data science to one content area, but they can see the threads across what they want to accomplish in the social sciences, science, as I mentioned earlier, and then of course incorporating into literacy. But we see this as a way of creating another level of empowerment in our community. That's something that our families have expressed great interest in, and we think this is a way for communities to deepen their efforts in those interests.
That's wonderful, and I think seeing concrete examples of that on the ground more and more will inspire others to recognize that there's more than just what's happening within the sort of school walls themselves, but that this is a question that engages people outside of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, how to argue and advocate for yourself, is written all over this, and how to analyze, and so just the notion of data literacy within itself presents many opportunities for our young people and their families to have a strong voice in what they would like to see in their neighborhoods and for themselves.
I couldn't say it better, and the notion that sort of data is power, and the data is produced with certain perspectives, I think are pieces that once people's eyes are open to them, then they start to step up even more and recognize the real importance of that. I wanted to make sure that we thought about the bigger system itself. What are the ways in which we can really work to create a kind of collaborative ecosystem where teachers get the support that they need, and where students have access to these tools, thinking sort of at a bigger sense. And I'll throw it to anybody, but maybe Suyen and Joe, you want to speak for just a couple minutes to that question of how we think about the supporting the bigger system with teachers, as a kind of community, or building on what each other has done.
Want me to go first, Joe?
Yeah, go, sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in our experience, having worked with Los Angeles Unified School District at the beginning, that is a big system. And, I think that when you want to get something started right off the ground, you need, of course, bringing in all the stakeholders. But initially, you need to bring, I call it the sandwich approach, and it's not the geometry sandwich, Joe. It's a different sandwich.
Good.
It's the top leadership and also the grassroots, the teachers, and you need to get to both of them at the same time, because you need to have both of their buy-ins. And as you go through and you go along, you need to bring in the people in the middle, specifically counselors. So speaking for high school specifically, counselors need to be educated as far as, what these new courses are, what is the purpose. A lot of the counselors, rightly so, they want to make sure that students meet all the requirements that students need to meet. But at the same time, when, they've not really heard what is data science, they also need to be educated. And parents are the linchpin. I mean, they are the ones who have the best interest of their children in mind. And through outreach, we need to make sure parents are educated, making sure that they know the need. What is the need right now? I have, my child is starting college in the fall, and guess what he's going into? Statistics and data science. I didn't influence that, I promise. But all joking aside, it's really, really important that the entire system be included. And the work that Jo and her her group is doing in highlighting data science is that important part in mathematics framework in California. It's invaluable. And as I mentioned before, I've been doing this since 2012. So I've seen the whole progression of it. And I went from knocking on, people's doors at schools, like, let me tell you what data science is. It's really exciting, to now being in the math framework. It's really important. Also, a really well-designed curriculum for students where they are engaged, where it is relevant, and they're getting and acquiring real life skills is super important. Why? Because ultimately the students are the ones who by word of mouth tell the other students, hey, this is a really good course. I can see this in real life working. Math comes to life. Computer science is applicable, that kind of thing. So
that's very interesting. I know we've seen in other cases that students also bring that to teachers when they get the fire for something in one classroom and it's not happening in another. They ask questions. I need to get to the big system question in a second, but Jo, do you have any last thoughts on this sort of question of collaborative ecosystem of teachers?
I did want to talk about the training of teachers briefly. I am currently redesigning my mathematics preparation for the teachers at Stanford to infuse data science through all of their training. And I think this is a really important goal for maths educators out there, any college people listening, anybody who's training teachers. I know we are a kind of niche, small amount of teachers at Stanford, but I think bringing data into the training of maths teachers is really critical. And as well as that, there are online classes. I have one that 30,000 teachers have loved, getting the data science ideas to teachers. I know Holly Lindley has data science courses. So if we can fund teachers to have space, there are data science training resources out there. But we can't expect teachers to take these online classes on top of everything else they're doing. Some exceptional teachers do, and that's fantastic. But we need to fund time for teachers to take these courses that are available. I think that's really important in the education of teachers. We're finding that teachers love these ideas. They're very excited about them. They want to bring this content into their teaching, but only if they have the space to learn those ideas.
That's so important to honor and gets forgotten a lot within this. So as before we move to Q&A, I wanted to zoom out another layer and kind of look at the system. And Janet, I know you've thought about at Foundation, thinking about sort of scale and impact across bigger systems. What perspective do you or the Foundation have on, in general, sort of building for scale that we might draw from other examples, or from your perspective across education, important elements or lessons learned on how we bring data education to scale at sort of district and state levels and nationwide? What do we need to do? What needs to be involved?
I think that the other panelists have kind of given a playbook. I mean, I think that scale is really hard, and you need to find the levers that move the system, much like all of them have been doing with working on the frameworks or integrating this within equity frameworks that are core parts of broader activity within a district, addressing course sequences, working to put pressures on colleges to accept courses. teacher education, working with the accreditation system so that, schools of education have to include attention to data education, building this into professional development. So I think that, those sorts of levers, which we've heard, are really absolutely critical. I also feel as though the examples are really helpful, and the examples are helpful for others who want to implement similar efforts. And I think examples are really helpful for communities and for parents to, bring them on board and help them become important advocates, because I think, parents and communities can serve as a lever for change within education systems. And then I think you need a little luck. And it does seem, and the timing has to be right. And it does seem like we could be at this moment, this confluence of reform efforts that really can come together and push data science forward in a way that addresses, some of the historic inequities in our system, that can bring together different subject areas in ways that have, education has struggled in the past. Bringing together. So we're at this moment, and I think that, post-pandemic, we know we can do things differently because we just did things differently. So I do think that there could be a really interesting moment now where, if you push from a number of different positions within and outside the system, you might actually be able to move it in a way that's really exciting and reflects what we've heard from panelists on who are doing work that's much closer to the ground than I am.
That's a great point. And I think that combination is a critical one to recognize the sort of coming through a portal, as I've heard it described of the pandemic, to think about what we bring with us and what we create new, and the power of those examples for crystallizing people's notions. The combination of that, I think, is a key part of that recipe for scale. This is great. We've got some questions from the general Q&A. If there are others out there who have questions, feel free to add them in. We have a few minutes to think about those. I wanted to jump to one that was asking a little bit more of Dr. Farabee about how your team is incorporating data science into different curricula, or how you sort of see that happening. It's from Yolanda Archibald.
Thank you for that question. For us, we have a task force that is responsible for hitting all the levers. I think Janet did a great job of highlighting that. I think one way that we see this work moving forward, or we haven't talked a lot about when we think about teachers, the school leaders that are leading and supporting them. And so we are looking at ways in which our school leaders can help drive this work home, along with our instructional coaches in our cluster support model, which is built around our superintendents that supervise schools and teams that they have to deploy directly to support schools. But again, we think that there's a number of different entry points in addition to the coursework that we have for teachers, looking at the data science curriculum that's available to us, and then also using it as a tool for empowerment for our students and families. But there's so much that we know that we don't know, which is why we're excited that we have tools like IDS that is helping us be proactive in the journey that we're on for data science.
That's great to hear. And I think that thinking about that from those multiple levels is already inspiring, because it does take a whole group of different perspectives together, both from the teaching side and from the system side, to make this happen. There's a specific question from Valerie Logan about the definition of data. And she's asking, when we say data, do we define it as all types of information sources? With exposing her bias that if we don't, we're pushing this too narrowly. I wanted to throw that to you, Sia, and to start, because I know IDS has thought about data more broadly, and the GAZE standards think about this in ways that go beyond just a table of numbers. How have you seen that, and what are the ramifications of thinking more broadly about the definition of data?
Yeah, non-traditional data forms are super important for kids to understand that it's not just a set of numbers that you're working with. Observations, what we call an observation, is information that becomes data once collected. And so in our curriculum, we have students work with GPS data. GPS data can be collected, their own GPS data if they decide to allow it, or we can get GPS data, for example, of mountain peaks and have them make maps with these mountain peak data. That's one example of a non-traditional data source. When they collect data about how they're feeling, you know. Therefore, you have text data, and you need to learn to work with that. And so, yeah, definitely not narrowing down what data are, especially understanding that any observation can be data. It's really important.
Right. And Joe, you mentioned the importance of multivariate data. I don't know if people always appreciate that that idea, or that distinction is meaningful until it gets laid out for them. Can you speak for a second about what that's meant in on the ground examples for people, and why it's important?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
I thought it was Joe. Sorry, I thought it was for me.
I know you could. We could both talk about this.
Yeah, everybody can answer, I'm sure, but
yeah, I mean, we're designing multivariate tasks for kindergartners and up, because we know that they can start thinking about more than 2 variables, which is what the standards are assuming, 2 variables for years and years and years. But actually, you can ask even the youngest kids, let's everybody bring a toy into the classroom and think about how are these toys different. They may be fluffy or not, they may have different colors, they may be animals or not, and kids are totally able to think in that multivariate way. So of course, as you get up through the grades, those different variables become different to qualities of your toy. But that kind of multivariate thinking, we can instill that in the youngest of students. I also love that these different data visuals, like the Dear Data project that happened between designers, they're great data visuals that include lots and lots of variables. I love assigning that to my students. Just go out, collect data on something in your life, and then we'll come back and create data visuals together that bring in, and I say to them, make sure you include 3 or more variables. So yeah, just having kids be thinking about how things differ, what a variable means, and how we can have this variation, super important, even for the youngest students.
Those are great points, and those are well founded in research as well, that shows the importance of having students attend to what choices are made in visualizations, and to create their own visualizations early on, including the legends.
And I should also shout out your resources, Chad. The Concord data sets are incredible. I use them with all the teachers we work with. It's and really lovely ways of kids exploring patterns and data and looking at different variables. So yeah, I just want to say that.
That's great to hear. I mean, I think one of the notions that you mentioned with multivariable data, we try to bring out in things like and make possible in things like our CodeApp data tool, is the bring across the idea that in data science, you don't have 2 variables. You're not trying to interpret a graph of a line most of the time. You're awash in data. And so bringing that across for students and teachers early and often seems to be one of the things that's come out over the years as an important way to bring the essence of data science into the field. Let's see, the last piece I have, and we've got to transition on, is there was a question in general about sort of accountability for teachers and content. Any views across the panelists on how that is happening, or what we need to be doing to be thinking about how we're accountable, how we're identifying progress in this field, both for students and teachers? Quick sentences from anybody.
I would love to give a shout out to keeping this data science content focused on big ideas, not to the itemized small pieces of content that have made up our standards. We've released a set of these across California if people would like to see them. And it's so important for data science. We're also communicating, you want kids learning these data ideas within a cycle of data exploration. We don't want this, let's strip off one piece of it and teach this content in a textbook question. So I think this comes up in the accountability question. Some people think we have to have these minute standards to keep teachers accountable. So I'd really like to make a push for those bigger idea, and we can develop assessments around those. So that would be my short answer.
That's wonderful. I wish we had time for 5 more short answers. Unfortunately, we don't. I'd encourage everybody to go to the different resources and groups that are here, and to engage with these folks on the Slack channel as well, because there's lots of good back channel conversation happening. Thanks to everybody for this great perspective. And back to you, Kumar.
Amazing. Well, thank you. We have education leaders, and you know, my children attend DC public school, so it's always great to have folks who are intimately involved in their educational success involved. So I want to thank everybody for making the time. We're going to take another quick break and be back. I know folks are everywhere, but we're going to be back at 2:50, which is just a little bit over a 5-minute break. And so 2:50 Eastern time. And we're going to start off with a quick conversation with Mark Schneider, who's the head of IES, the Institute for Education Sciences, the Department of Education, to talk about some of the role the administration is playing through the Department of Ed on data science education. And we'll keep going through. I appreciate everyone joining in, and we'll be back soon. All right, everybody. I hope folks are back from their break, but as folks cycle back in, I wanted to introduce, one of our goals is to really introduce you to some of the leaders who made today possible, but are also going to help carry the work both inside and outside the government. I think one of those leaders is Mark Schneider, who heads up the Institute for Education Sciences at the U.S. Department of Education. And, Mark has been showing exemplary leadership on a whole range of education issues. But one of the things that I think he and I have really bonded on is the importance of data science, both in the how of how, IES can operate, but it also data science as a skill set, that our children need. One of the things Mark and I have been talking about as the competitiveness bill moves through the Congress. This is the bill that the Senate passed on a bipartisan vote and said, how do we make sure that we're really leading the world in key industries? A big part of that was actually STEM education and making sure we have a workforce that's ready, and making sure we have a data science sort of built into that, I think is really important. So I wanted to just introduce Mark, both to talk just a minute or two about some of his goals for how data science education can fit in, but also some of the things that IES has in development against this, just for folks to know and how they can engage Mark in the days ahead. So Mark.
Okay. So we are one of the largest investors in education research in the world, and we're just trying to keep up to date with all the changes that are going on in the real world. So we are trying to create a unit on data excellence and data science and education. We have authority to hire 3 people. We're probably going to get up to 5 or 6, and that will be a unit that is housed in my office, the director's office. So it's not reporting to any of the different centers in the institute, and it'll be an institute-wide resource. But that's, what I hope is that a team like that will be able to help us handle all the large amounts of data that we have, modernize our data, use of data, and more importantly, the way in which we display data and use data so that more and more people could more easily understand, access, and use our data. But, so that's internal. But our biggest challenge is actually trying to change the way in which schools are using data science, right? So we're 20 years old, our anniversary is next year, and actually, like a 20-year-old adult is rambunctious and is coming out of teens and experimenting. A 20-year-old bureaucracy is staid and sluggish, and uses the same things that they've developed over 20 years. So we're just trying to break that and trying to make the institute more nimble, more attuned to modern changes. But we also have limits to what we could do. So for example, by law, we cannot endorse any curriculum, and we have to be really careful about that. So we're trying to figure out, for example, about how we could encourage the adoption of data science in middle schools, right? Because by the time we could imagine more of it going on in high schools than middle schools, but it's probably too late by then. So the question is, what can we do in middle schools to encourage the adoption of science in, well, let's see, in math is easy, science is harder, social sciences, social studies, without saying, this is a curriculum that you could use. So and the other thing is that we don't want to write a 150-page report that just gets buried. So one of the things that we've been trying to do throughout the Institute is to make all our reports more action-oriented and much more like checklists, right? If you want to do this, here are 5 things that you need to do. Here are 10 things that you need to do. Check the boxes, right? It's like, if you get in an airplane, the pilot doesn't just put in the key, turn on the engine, take off, right? They have pages of checklists that they have to go through before they take off. We're trying to figure out what checklist might look like for the use of data science in middle schools. And that's going to be a project that's going to take a couple of months to do. But at least we have the idea of what the target is, what the audience is. So once you know that, then it's much easier to talk to people and to design products than just sort of say, oh, we want to encourage data science in schools. So we're working on that. We'll probably have a technical working group on this we're not sure if we could do it before the end of the fiscal year, but no later than early October. And then we will figure out a rollout strategy to get this checklist out and again, I mean, I'd be curious to know what you all think about the target of middle schools, because I think that's where the need is the greatest, but I'm interested in knowing what you all think about that. So I think that's the biggest thing that we have on the horizon. So we have an internal project to improve our use of data science within IS. And I think our biggest push for data science outside is going to be in the middle schools.
That's great, Mark. And Mark, you have, I believe you have somebody from Risk on loan to you. And so one of the ways that you're recruiting both talent directly to help on this, but also, one of the things I always tell people is you're very open to getting ideas from the field for what are ways IES and others inside the government can help. And so I think, our goal really to emphasize to people is this is the beginning, and that your, our partners in government are open to additional ideas on this.
Yeah, so this whole push is a few months old, literally, just a few months old. So so when we got the ARP money, one of the things that I wanted to use that for was to actually create the Center for Excellence in Data Science and Education. But that's a much longer commitment than the ARP money, which is a commitment. But we do have, as I said, we did get hiring authority, not always the easiest thing to get in the federal government, to hire as many as 5 people to do that. We also have, as Kumar notes, we have a few people on loan. So a combination of IPAs and fellowships. We are always interested in having really smart people come and spend a year on special projects. And we've had right now we have 1 IPA and 2 fellows, and they're all 3 of them actually are doing incredibly good work.
That's great. My son is.
Oh, that's what it is. I thought
so my son
was getting rambunctious. It was your
let me throw to the videos for our next set of commitments, and let's roll that. And then thank you so much, Mark.
Okay. And as Kumar always says, I'm always anxious to hear from any of you. mark.schneider@ed.gov. Take it easy now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse Lovejoy, Director of 49ers EDU, the San Francisco 49ers STEAM Education Program. I am so excited to announce that we, alongside our longtime partners, SAP, are joining the Data Science for Everyone Coalition. In the next couple of years, we'll be rolling out some really exciting virtual in-person materials and field trip programming that will allow young people K-12 to understand how data science comes to life through football and SAP's business. Thanks a lot, and thanks for joining.
Data science concepts can be infused across the K-12 curriculum by training educators to integrate data literacy into their teaching. Here at Georgia State University, we have extensive experience creating micro-credentials for current and future teachers. The College of Education and Human Development delivers a variety of specialized teacher preparation programs. The University Library's Data Services team trains college students on a variety of data concepts and tools. Working together, we commit to develop and deliver a set of self-paced online courses that culminate in a data science endorsement.
I'm Jericho Appo from UPT.
We are an EdTech nonprofit helping low-income high school students connect with live on-demand tutors for free. Our DSE commitment is to recruit 100 additional statistic tutors by the end of 2021. Data science is an important field that can lead students into fulfilling and high-paying careers. High school statistics is one of the most in-demand tutoring subjects at Upchief, but many students struggle with understanding data science when they're first exposed to it. We chose our commitment so that more students understand and fall in love with the world of data. If you or someone you know wants to get involved in becoming a volunteer statistics tutor, please visit upchief.org/volunteer or email us at partnerships@upchief.org. Thank you.
I'm Mazikane at the Virginia Department of Education.
I'm Brian Wallace of Code VA.
This is where public education began.
One-room schoolhouses just like this one.
We've come a long way since then.
And we're proud today to take one more step forward.
We're using this commitment opportunity to partner in a multi-year plan to further data science.
And we'll use it at all grade levels to help content come alive.
We'll be meaningfully and intentionally infusing data science into Virginia's mandatory mathematics and computer science standards.
And using the Data Science for Everyone commitment as our springboard.
We'll build bridges between these and other content areas.
The students hearing and telling human stories told through the powerful lens of data science.
This includes K-8 curricula and high school mathematics pathways courses in data science.
That fuse artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Virginia is the digital dominion.
And we know that computer science and data science
and mathematics are essential literacy for all students.
I'm Susan Gonzalez with AI and You. We are honored to be part of this effort to bring data science education to everyone in all communities. At first, data science sounds complicated, but here's the thing, it's not. Take our phone, for example. Everything we do, whether we're shopping online or using a GPS, it's all built on data. Data makes it work. And interpreting and analyzing this data is at the core of virtually every job across all industries today. Data drives decisions. Those decisions impact our lives. It's that important. And because data is so important, we need to ensure that underrepresented communities are involved in every stage of its creation and management. Tech equity in our communities begins with representation. And a career in data science ensures that our communities will have a voice at the table. Equity and inclusion is at the cornerstone of all of this work in data science. Diverse minds and voices will be heard through data science education. Now is our time.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank everybody, for all the commitment makers for making those commitments. And we're going to have another batch right at the end. And, you know, if you feel inspired by those commitments, to check them out in the Slack, and as well as if you want to make yours, we're eager to work with you. And I also want to, thank everyone for the cameo my son just made a few minutes ago. So, you know, we're still living our way through the pandemic, and we'll get a few, and it's a sign of what all our parents are going through in one way or another. Well, I'm so thrilled for what's coming up next, which is a panel, a fireside chat conversation between our John King, who's both has been president and CEO of the Education Trust, but someone I met when he was leading the U.S. Department of Education, and is recently a new candidate for governor of Maryland, as well as Karen Marangel, who's the AD for Education and HR at the National Science Foundation, and is poised, don't think I'm breaking any news, but is poised for even more leadership at the department, at the National Science Foundation. And they're gonna have a wonderful conversation I'm really looking forward to about, what are we actually trying to do for our kids? What is the role that leaders can really expect? And we really call on them. They've served in such a variety of roles. John has been a leader both in education at the state level as well. And I want to welcome them to the stage and look forward to the conversation.
Thanks so much, Kumar. Excited about this conversation with Karen and deeply committed, as you know, both in my time as secretary and in the work at Education Trust, to the idea that data science is a key lever for equity. That if we expose students to data science, they will have more opportunities to succeed in post-secondary education across disciplines, more opportunities to compete in the 21st century economy for the good jobs that rely on the use of data science every day, and that there's an opportunity to close some of the very difficult gaps that we see around race and income through quality teaching grounded in data science. So lots of opportunity here. I'm excited to talk with Karen about. Also excited that the Education Trust West, our team in California, is a key partner in this effort and is going to work within California to make sure that data science is emphasized in the revisions to the math framework, and that effort around data science is equity focused, and that careful thought is given to how we support the success of students of color and students who are English learners. Too often, students who are English learners don't get access to quality math opportunities and data science opportunities. We need to do something about that. That requires intentionality about curriculum, around teacher recruitment, as well as school culture. And we're excited to partner in this effort, in that work. So Karen, super excited to be talking with you. Let me just start by asking you to talk generally about the role of the National Science Foundation in advocating for greater educational opportunity in data science.
Absolutely, John. Thanks so much. It's great to be here with you and with everyone who is online today. So we at the NSF, we take data science education very seriously for a number of reasons. First and foremost, because data, advanced data analytics, the increasing use of artificial intelligence and other advanced technologies is changing the way that we do science, and it's happening fast. And this is happening across all scientific disciplines, the physical sciences, earth and environmental sciences, biological sciences, social sciences. So data science has really profoundly changed the types of questions that we dare to ask and changing how we're approaching answers to them. And I think that with the rise of CRISPR technologies is a wonderful example of that in biology. And just even more recently, the advances that we were able to quickly make to get vaccines to market so fast using new technologies can all link back to data science. So given that background and NSF's commitment to broadening participation, to ensuring that everyone in the country has access to science and a scientific career, so should they so choose, that is a cornerstone of the work that we do at the National Science Foundation. And as a result, we pair hand in hand our work in increasing access and really studying and understanding what works in data science education with that focus and that lens on equity, ensuring that anyone, anywhere can have access to data science. And we do this, of course, through funding research and discoveries in the education space. And that, of course, includes data science.
Great. So let me push on what I think is one of the biggest challenges. How do we better prepare and support our teachers around data science? Many of them may not have been exposed to very much work in data science as undergraduates or in their graduate training. The curriculum materials are newer, the PD just nascent. What do we do about that problem?
Yeah, so we have we have several projects underway that are focusing on teachers and supporting teachers for exactly the reasons that you state, John. There's so much new coming at teachers these days. So we have, for instance, and because we know that data science education must start even before the high school level, and I know that that my colleague Mark just also reiterated that point. So we're funding projects right now. We have one that's focused on developing data science curricular resources and understanding of student thinking about data science in the elementary grades. And we're doing this in some rural school districts where we know that teachers have limited technology support, they have limited computer science curricular resources, and that they themselves may be teaching subjects outside of their own preparation. So through this discovery and design development type projects, we are funding a bunch of test cases around the country, existence proof, so to speak. What can work for students? What can work for teachers? What are the types of professional development that is needed for teachers? And I think we draw on our long history and legacy of understanding what works in professional development most generally for teachers. So sustained professional development, connecting it to their practice, connecting and networking teachers, and then bringing in the data science focus. And here we can draw on the large community of experts that NSF regularly consults and works with to bring them together with teacher educators to ensure that content is made accessible to teachers, but also that teachers have an opportunity to go through the learning process themselves, because this is quite new.
Absolutely. I'd be curious how you think about this for teachers outside of math. And I think everyone sort of sees data science as something that's going to happen in the math classroom. But I think there's a strong argument to be made that science teachers, social studies teachers, English language arts teachers also need to understand data science and equip their students in data science literacy. How do you think about that?
I could not agree more, John. And when I look at our projects that are focused on, we do have some projects even focusing on data science at the preschool level. So when we're working with teachers, especially at those early preschool, early elementary grades, where we know that math isn't always their favorite subject to teach, that gives us some indication of the types of experiences that are important for those teachers to themselves understand at a deeper level data science, but also see how it can be knit throughout the curriculum. And I think that, through the decades of curriculum development, we have some really great models to draw upon at the university level, writing across the curriculum, where writing was infused in all sorts of subjects from, math and science to, philosophy and, and psychology. So we have some nice models of how we can infuse data science throughout all of the subjects. But I agree that the supports have to be there. They have to be appropriate for the teachers, where teachers are and their levels, and where they can see meaning in bringing data science and an urgency for bringing data science into the variety of classrooms where we could see it really having an impact.
Absolutely. Can you, we have a range of folks on this call with different levels of depth of appreciation for even what we mean when we're talking about data science as an intended educational outcome. Can you talk a little bit about what are the kinds of things you would want a high school graduate to have been exposed to during their K-12 education around data science? And then as we think about the college curriculum, how should colleges and universities be thinking about what they owe their students in terms of data science literacy?
Yeah, we have funded some really nice work. Let's see, I'll cite two projects that have really tried to scope out recommendations at both the K-12 level for statistics and data science, and then the undergrad level for data science. So let me start with the K-12 level. The Guidelines for Assessment and Instruction in Statistics Education, or GAIS, the GAIS project, they have produced several reports. And this is a group that has formed under the auspices of the American Statistical Association and the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. And they highlight recommendations for statistics education K through 12, and then also kind of companion introductory stats courses at the college level. I think a lot of what GAIS has infused, and they've updated their standards recently as a result of advances in data science, computer science, and advanced technologies. They are proponents of students ensuring that students have access to generating data sets, so asking the questions that are most meaningful to them. Also using open source data that is out there, because there's so much data. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here. There's so much data and in open access ways that students can ask questions and then go to data sets, find data, and then see the need for, oh, what are the techniques that are going to help me make sense of these data? What are the techniques that are going to help me display the data? And I think that what I really like about the GAZE guidelines is that they ground this in the student experience and what is meaningful to students. And as we talk about equity, it's not enough that we just make available opportunities, but we also have to ensure that what we are showing to students is meaningful to them. So a really nice set of guidelines there. And then at the undergraduate level, we funded some work through the Park City Mathematics Institute in around 2016, 2017, that produced curriculum guidelines for a full-blown undergraduate degree program in data science. Now, I used to be the dean of a college of liberal arts and sciences. And so I see, as we already talked about, data science everywhere, and a lot of principles that would span whether you're a major or, an English major getting a college degree. But, certainly some level of computational and statistical thinking is really important, really necessary at this point, depending on how much you are going to do. If you are going to get a degree, a major in data science, you need to have some solid mathematical foundations and mathematical base. And I think that we should be creative in thinking about what is that base. Is it the same thing as a mathematics major? Probably not. I say that as a math major. And then some opportunities to build models, and then to look at the assessment of those models. And then, of course, data curation, and of course, the visualization of data, as I had mentioned, which is important for K-12 as well, but really understanding how to make sense of data, how to display data and communicate with data.
Absolutely. Let me pick up on one thread of what you just described, this question of equity. There's no question that if you look nationally, Black and Latino students are underrepresented in degree programs and fields of data science. Black and Latino students are underrepresented in the students who are successfully completing, let's say, the AP statistics course. Black and Latino folks are underrepresented in the workforce in data science jobs. So we have big equity challenges, particularly around issues of race. What do we do about those? How is NSF thinking about that? How would you help folks on this call think about that?
Yeah, so I go back to the principle of understanding what we know. So like why are students not driving towards these courses, these majors? And we know a lot about why they are not choosing STEM majors or dropping out of STEM majors more generally. A lot of it points to the quality of instruction at the undergraduate level. For students in STEM disciplines, not feeling a sense of belonging in their majors, and getting off track quickly. So if you make a mistake in one course, you're set off your track, and that could add costly years onto your degree. So these are just a few of the issues. I think this like data science does have more than some of the other STEM disciplines, though broadly you could say this about STEM disciplines, but it really does have the opportunity to root the methodologies in data science to the interests of students. And it takes work to do that, of course, as a curriculum developer or as a teacher, as a university professor, to really personalize and bring in students' interest into the course. But that's a place that we really need to start. Why is this important? How can this help you as a student accomplish the things that you want to accomplish? And how can you then build the skill sets to do that in a supported way? So we do have a long way to go, certainly in data science, as in a lot of the STEM disciplines. But I think we can look to some of the research to show why students have told us they are leaving the STEM disciplines as some indicators of what needs to change.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I love that. And I think about that as an interdisciplinary topic. You know, I was a social studies teacher, and I think about how you could have students looking at exposure to lead and analyzing that based on race and seeing how there are these racial inequities in issues of environmental protection, and then help them think about, well, now what do you do about that? What levels of government are responsible? How would you change that? Just so many opportunities here. I also appreciate your talking about the climate around STEM fields. You know, certainly something I worry a lot about is the underrepresentation of people of color in teaching positions in the STEM fields. That we need many more Black, Latino math teachers at the K-12 level, many more Black and Latino math professors at the university level, as well as more bilingual faculty who can engage with students and their families in their home language. I'd be curious, and I know our time is short, I'd be curious for you, 5 years from now, what do you hope is different? Folks on this call are making a lot of commitments. When you look ahead, what should be changed?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I would love if in 5 years we have made room at the K-12 level for statistical and computational thinking throughout the curriculum. And so when we talk about statistics, data science, computer science, we are really talking about the curriculum that our students today need and deserve. And we do have to make hard choices about what to let go of and what is going to be okay not to teach. And we have to do that carefully and thoughtfully, but we have to do that. And this is not also an issue just for K-12, because at the universities, which drive a lot of the pressures on K-12, we also have to have much more of a spirit of innovation there, thinking about how do we craft majors of all sorts that take advantage of the rich data sets that are around us and ensure that students are not going to be scared off by taking statistics courses, taking data analytics courses or data science courses, that those courses are approachable and relevant to students no matter their major. This is not going to be accomplished by tinkering around the edges. This is going to require some pretty major overhauls. And while I'd love to see that done in 5 years, I'm also a little bit of a realist. I think that if we had some solid pilot projects started that ideally would link up K-12 with university and show that that pathways are possible with new types of math and science and new types of courses at the K-12 level, transitioning into undergraduate, and new types of courses at the undergraduate level, that would be a wonderful place to get to in 5 years, where we have some models of some things that work and that are really going to reshape what curriculum looks like as we think of the K through 20 spectrum.
Right. Well, as we try to equip folks to go out from this meeting as evangelists for data science, I want to make sure we prepare them for some of the counter arguments. What are the things you're hearing? Certainly people express just the sense of being overwhelmed in K-12, and given the impact of COVID in particular, the disruption of school, people can sort of say, well, we just can't take on anything new at the moment. Certainly you hear a concern, well, are we going to steer students away from excelling in some of the areas that colleges most value? And maybe this would be good in theory, but isn't that college admissions officer still going to be looking for that AP calculus score? So how do you respond to some of those counter arguments that we hear?
Yeah, and there's a lot of them out there. So, one of the biggest pre and post pandemic is exactly what you just hit on, calculus. And I love calculus. I have studied the learning and teaching of calculus, so it is very near and dear to my heart. But we continue to do a disservice to students as we drive them towards calculus, both in the high school and in a lot of the ways that our mathematics courses at the university are structured, where calculus really is the end goal, even if students don't end up taking it. It is very hard, and I understand the hesitation to break from that, because it's trying something new. So we know the game to play. We know the old model. It's familiar. We might not like it. We may have lots of students dropping out, but it's the thing that we do. So I think that is one of the hardest nuts to crack, is how, and again, this is where I think some test cases, some innovation examples to say, you know what, we did not drive everyone to calculus, and we still have a healthy healthy influx of STEM majors, and we have lots of other students who have exposure to statistical and data analytic thinking in ways that they wouldn't have under the old model. So that's one of the I think the biggest hurdles to get over. Certainly since the pandemic, there has been a focus on learning loss, rightfully, but I think it also offers an opportunity. And I know everybody is tired, everybody has had so much piled on them, but it does offer an opportunity to really think about doing things differently. Oh, if we didn't teach, a couple of these contents or, these pieces of the curriculum this year, what really is the effect on students? So we have to look for those places where we have some natural experiments really baked in. And then I think the last thing is we have to think carefully about, the other movements that are going on right now: computer science, statistics, artificial intelligence. And we have to make sure that we are not individually within each of these movements trying to pile so much on to teachers and faculty, and that we look for consistency across all these movements to say, hey, is there a base? What is the core across all of these? What are the core experiences that students need? What are the core, knowledge and skills that they need to develop? That, and then they can take these offshoots, if their interest really spikes. I think that is also going to be critical because there are so many tech-fueled advances that are very exciting, but it can be overwhelming. And then that may just lead to no change, and that would be bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to make sure I give you time to give a closing call to action. I will say that selfishly, on behalf of the Education Trust, I will take this moment to call people to action around applying their data science skills to equity issues within this field and within our work in the education sector. We should be constantly asking, are Black students, Latino students, our first generation students, our low income students, our AAPI communities that have been historically underserved, are those students getting access to these opportunities? Are they getting access at the K-12 level, at the higher ed level, in the workforce? We should constantly be looking at issues of gender equity. We should constantly be holding up a mirror to ourselves to make sure that we do this work in a way that is equity advancing. So that would be my call to action on behalf of the Education Trust. But Karen, let me give you the last word. What is your call to action to these either current or new data science evangelists who've joined us today?
John, you stated it so beautifully. So I would just underscore everything you just said right now about equity. And I would add to that, be bold. We need bold, courageous, innovative thinking in this space right now. And I really do believe that data science has a unique opportunity to really draw in a diversity of students and a diversity of students who have not traditionally been served by the STEM disciplines. So there is a lot of weight on the shoulders of all of you who are carrying this forward, but attend to equity and be bold in what you're thinking.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you, Kumar, for the opportunity to join this conversation.
Thank you.
Oh my God, you guys are like oozing with charisma and ideas and like a love for the space and so much knowledge that I could listen forever. But I also think you ended it exactly right, which is, what is the charge that we can all have to carry this work forward, both to use the skills, but also how to pass it and include others. So I think it's wonderful. Let me pass the baton on. We're starting to approach the final bit of our agenda as we start to think about, where do we want this community to go? What do next steps look like? And then what comes after this? So let me pass to Chike, who is, not only a dear friend, but has been leading as Chief Innovation Officer at the Department of Labor. And, it really builds on the conversation we just had, because one of the things I thought Karen and John did a really good job of is not making this into like just a K-12 conversation or just a higher ed conversation, but to say like, oh, well, actually if we make the mistakes at the higher ed, it sort of cycles back into early ed, into the K-12 piece. And I think Chike can help sort of say, well, where does, sometimes Department of Labor gets left out of some of these conversations. Like, what about the department? Like people talk about the workforce, but they forget that we have an agency that actually touches this in a number of ways. And part of our goal over this agenda has been to give you a little insight. What is IES up to? What are folks at NSF thinking about? What is OSTP? And now we have, Chike sort of leading the mantle of Department of Labor. Like, what are these different perspectives? But also, how do we make sure the real theme of this, which is all hands on deck, how does everyone contribute? So let me hand off to Chike and have him give us some thoughts on how this intersects to current work, but also his thoughts for his charge back to this community. Chike.
Kumar, thank you so much for having me, and honestly to Data Science for Everyone, and for everyone who is on this call. Just thank you for showing up, and thank you for taking what at times can be a technocratic conversation and really making it one about equity and progress. Let me say a couple things, some about kind of why I care about this, some about why I think we should all care about this, and potentially just some thoughts about how we need to approach this work coming out of this conversation. So I think we've all been to a lot of these, particularly I think in the last 16 months, where we have a really energizing Zoom chat, but energy dissipates once the Zoom goes off. And ideally the goal is how do we actually not just keep the energy, but actually build the energy once this is over. And I know that the folks behind this are going to make sure that happens. Why do I care about this? And for those of you who know me, people very much know I'm a prisoner of biography. And I think about my family, when my parents came to this country from Nigeria years ago. My dad to study biochem, my mom to study accounting, and thinking about my grandparents, none of whom went past middle school, my parents who had Peace Corps volunteers in their classrooms. And if I think about why I came into government, I'm 5 months in now. It is to frankly replicate the circumstances that brought me to sitting before you today. And so I think about, okay, my dad came to this country in 1974 and was able to have a life that allows me to sit in front of you and talk to you. If someone came here like my dad today, what would we need to do to allow them to have a grandchild or a child to be able to say that? And I'm going to say to you that data science is part of that for this reason. More than oil in the ground, more than electricity that flows through the wires that powers our homes, data is beyond human beings is the most viable commodity that we have. As someone who now sits in the federal government, and for all the conversations that I have about it, as someone who's been in industry, who figured out ways to monetize it, to someone who worked in a nonprofit trying to figure out ways to get access to it, it is the most valuable thing that we have. So if we take that and we believe data is the most valuable thing out there, data science is in some ways how we frankly go into the equivalent of the ground and pull that data out and make sense of it. And unless we make data science for everyone, and then frankly, the value of that data is only going to accumulate to a few. So when we talk about who is the value of data going to accumulate to or accrue to, that is why data science has to be for everyone. Because if we don't make it for everyone, it's going to be for a few. And we're going to replicate the inequalities that frankly, I spend a lot of my days thinking about, that my colleagues across government spend a lot of my days thinking about, that people like Kumar spend a lot of their days thinking about. We have a chance to do this differently, and I hate to use the Build Back Better term, but it's a good term. Part of how we build back better is thinking differently and better about how we make data science available to everyone than we frankly did in the past with other types of new technologies. So as we think about that, all of you have heard the phrase, talent is equally distributed and opportunity is not. Everyone has heard that, but the question is, if we believe that, what are we going to do about data science to actually work against that? And everything that you heard from the last conversation, what's been said today, are a number of those things. But let me just talk about one, and it's something that some other folks have heard me say, but I think it's a really important thing, which is, for those of you who've heard President Biden talk about responding to COVID, you will hear him always talk about a whole of government response. And I'll tell you, for COVID, that's 100% true. Everyone is doing their part to make sure that we beat this pandemic and again, get back to normal, but hopefully get back to a better normal. But I would argue we have to go a step beyond for a challenge like this. We actually need to have a whole of society approach where each one of us asks, what can we do? I remember when I was a teacher years ago and I worked for John King. one of the things that we used to say when I was a second grade teacher is that literacy is everyone's job. Literacy was the gym teacher's job, it was the math teacher's job, it was the janitor's job, it was everyone's job. And we all figured out how we made literacy part of what we did. I would argue for each of us, no matter where we sit in society, data science has to be part of our job. And here's what I mean. For some of us who are in the workforce development space, it's about how are we making more opportunities available to get that particular skill set. For those of us who might be in industry, we have to think through how are we being clear about the skills that we need? How are we making sure that when people show up with data science skills, but in a different format than we're used to, that we can recognize them and actually hire them? For those of us who actually produce data, how are we making training sets available to people who want to study this so that they can do so that they can actually get better? For someone like me at the Department of Labor, I can sit and think about all of our open data sets and how we make them even more open and get them out to more people as quickly as possible, just as an example. But for each of us, and for frankly, not probably for the evangelists who are on this call, but for all the people that we work with, there's something that everyone can do. And the question is, how do we make sure that we identify that which everyone can do to make this far more available? And so you heard the really, really important conversation about K-12. Again, I started my career as a K-12 teacher, and everything that was said is exactly true. Literally, you're trying to figure out, I have this many hours in the day. How do I do more things? I have to do more things, but I don't get more time, generally. So how do I do that? That's a real conversation. On the higher ed level, right before this, I was leading a collaborative of community colleges on the Workforce Development Challenge. It's the very same topic. Conventional higher ed, workforce development, same thing. Similarly, on the company side, how are we being clear about the skills that we need? And how are we, if we say we need to fill all these data science positions, what are we doing to go upstream and actually make sure that we don't simply complain to HR that we don't have enough great candidates? How are we actually making sure that we're going out in community and finding them and creating the pipelines that are successful and potentially that will be successful so that folks who are coming from communities that we've overlooked can actually be successful? One thing that, for example, we think a lot about at the Department of Labor is apprenticeship. For those of you who have listened to President Biden, he is very clear about his belief in that model, and the research bears it out. There's another benefit of apprenticeship, which is not usually considered, but really matters for equity. For those of us who got to go to fancy schools and have, frankly, the light of the country shine upon us, when we interview, we have a point in time where we get to show how great we are and how smart we are, and that point in time will dictate our future. What you find for folks who frankly have not been as lucky as many of us who are on this call is that one point in time, that single point, it's actually a single point of failure. If I don't show up in that single point of time when I do my case interview, when I do my product, whatever the case might be, I'm not going to get a second shot. The thing about apprenticeship is now we take that single point of failure and we make it a longitudinal opportunity for someone to actually show what they can do. And so as we think about how we want to make sure that we have an equitable pipeline of data science talent, we have to rethink how do we bring that talent in differently. And registered apprenticeships can actually be a part of that, not just because they have a research base to actually teach skills, but they actually provide someone who frankly may not have had this opportunity before, lots of chances, a true chance to show what they can do and how good they are. And again, it allows us to basically see the talent that a lack of opportunity may not totally make apparent. So that's just one example that I know we're thinking about at the Department of Labor. But the question is, what's that example for you? What is the thing that you can do that will make this an opportunity that's far more likely for far more people? Let me end off with this. Right now, I spend a lot of my time working on unemployment insurance, and there's a debate right now about, do people want to work? And I have lots of thoughts about that. I won't dive in, but I will tell you, for the work that I do, I've not met anyone who doesn't want to work. And when I think about the students, particularly those who are really just coming up, and do they want to do this? I'll use one example. And I think Kumar has heard me tell this story before. This was probably now 2 or 3 years ago here in Prince George's County, where I'm from. I led, just kind of as a volunteer effort, a computer science boot camp where students got to basically design their own websites, make some of their own first algorithms. And it was 20 people from 2 Title I schools here in the county. And one of these was actually a young man, actually at that time in 8th grade, named Michael, who actually was too young to be in the program, but he was committed and he was dogged, and I let him in. Throughout the 9 weeks of that program, he was never late, did an amazing website, actually on sneakers. But I'll tell you, the first day of the program, he showed up. He showed up and he was brought by his older sister. He came in, walked in, sat down, got out his laptop, started to get to work. And his sister pulled me aside and said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" I said, "Sure." And she said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that Michael, his father, died last week." And I said, "Oh my God, my deepest condolences. Should he even be here?" And she said, "You know, you don't understand. This is the only thing he wants to do." And I tell that story about this young man because he is emblematic of so many people from so many neighborhoods across this country who, for the opportunity, are willing to work that hard, are willing to overcome that much. And the question is, are the rest of us showing up to allow them to do it? And I am heartened by the people that I see on this call. I'm heartened by the conversation that I heard. But when I hopefully can pull our heads up to think about why is this effort important, I'd have you think about two people. I have to think about my dad in 1974. If he arrived here today, what can we do to make what he did then possible now? And it's part of this work that we're doing here today. And I would have you think about Michael, whose father literally died the day before and was willing and motivated to come and make a website, make algorithms, which he had never done before, because he saw that as a path to his future. So I'm so excited. I'm so thankful. I'm so honored to be here today. Thank you to Data Science for Everyone, to my good friend Kumar, and everyone who's been involved here, and understand that the Department of Labor is a partner and here to help. And so Kumar, I throw it back to you.
Amazing. And I think it's a perfect charge for this group around the responsibility that we have, when we do this work, and to really, think about, keep some of those messages. I guess, Chike, one question I had for you as we head into the final part is, I actually think you're very accessible. You want people reaching out to you. You know what I mean? That I think one of your goals and real charges is you want people to actually see the Department of Labor as a partner, to raise their hand. Obviously, we won't try to overwhelm you in lots of individual emails, but are there things that you'd love people to sort of be, whether it's giving stories or examples or questions or other things you'd want people to sort of be reaching out to Labor about their work?
Great. No, that's a great question. Let me say a couple things, and I'll if I can, I think I'll drop my email in the chat. I'm happy to. Couple things. One, I love to see great examples. Hey, we are doing this cool thing where we're teaching data science to folks who normally wouldn't get the opportunity. Tell me where, tell me if I can. When things are more normal, I would love to show up. I'm beginning to do some of that now. So that's one. Or if you have a paper or a video, any artifact on like actual examples, because to be honest, I'm going to say this and I'm going to probably make a lot of my colleagues mad. Not that many great ideas come from DC. What happens is people from DC see great things out in the country and we like that thing. Let's figure out how we make more of that. So please, so that's number one. Number two, tell us what we can do to make your life easier. Is it make this data more available? Hey, it'll be awesome if this funding stream worked like this. Can I promise I can get that to you immediately? No, but knowing those things is really helpful. And when we, for example, this year, for those of you who know the policy world well enough, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, the big law that governs workforce development, being reauthorized, the Trade Adjustment Assistance Law, National Apprenticeship Act. All of these are on the table literally right now. If there are things, hey, it would be awesome if you did this differently. That's one. And then lastly, the thing that I would say are, and you said it really well, Kumar, stories. I would love to tell you that we are a bunch of rational actors here in DC, but I will tell you the power of narrative and the power of this person in this place had their life changed because we did this. I cannot overstate that power. And so there is a pathos that needs to go with the logos and the ethos to have this be successful. So as many of those, and don't ever feel like any story is too small. It's not, because I've seen stories change the entire kind of turn of debates. And so again, I'd say awesome examples that you have around the country of doing this work. Secondly, what can we do to make your life easier, better, scale? And then lastly, those stories that in the end at times really make the difference.
Amazing. Thank you, Chike. Thank you for everything you're doing. I know these jobs are hard, especially with little ones running around. So we appreciate your service.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
We'll
definitely all of you.
Awesome. Well, speaking of stories, we've got a final batch of these videos that'll be animating the commitments. And again, this is just a sampling, but I wanted to sort of highlight some of the additional work going on in the field. And after that, we're going to do a little bit just on from Steve Levitt on commitments and the work that comes forward from that. And then from there, we'll go into at 4 p.m. for folks who are interested. You should have in your email information for happy hour, virtual, unfortunately, but we'll do in-person ones soon enough, where people can continue to sort of network for people who you've met in the Slack channel in the chat. So let's play that final batch of announcements, and then we'll go to Steve.
Hi, I'm Ji-sun, and I'm from CourseKata.org. We have a free online interactive textbook for teaching data science to high school students and an authentic, rigorous set of class materials designed to reignite interest in mathematics, even among students who have been kind of traumatized in previous math classes. And our curriculum and professional development are continuously being improved as researchers, teachers, and technology developers work together using an improvement science methodology. So our commitment is to support 500 teachers and 25,000 high school students using our materials and to launch 10 research nodes to use course kata data to improve the teaching and learning of data science for all students.
Hi, my name is Eric Van Dusen from UC Berkeley Data Science. We look forward to working with the Commitments campaign and making some great materials in the coming years. Here at UC Berkeley, we're very passionate about making data science as inclusive as possible and accessible to all comers and all new learners. We are very intentional about the choices that we make, about the open nature of our technology, our curriculum, and our materials that we put out there. We are invested in creating community, empowering new instructors, and creating a basis to let other people innovate in this space.
Data literacy is important because when you think about it, we all live in a world driven by numbers.
No matter what industry you work in, you are surrounded by data. Students need to learn how to make sense of it.
Data just tells a story. If students are data literate, they can find those stories.
EDC is committed to recognizing the central role that data science plays in the lives of all members of society.
That's
right,
all
members.
We commit to creating and supporting data science activities for learners of all ages, from preschool through college and beyond.
Finally, we commit to expanding access to data science with a focus on those most underrepresented in STEM.
Our goal is nothing less than data science for all.
Just as reading is essential to our ability to learn, understanding data ensures we can pursue our careers, participate in our communities, and manage our financial well-being. As technology continues to change the face of the world, it is increasingly important that all students are data literate to ensure that they have access to tech industry jobs, and that algorithms and code are not used to disenfranchise underserved communities. As a policy institute, Just Equations commits to conducting and disseminating policy analysis and engaging policymakers, education leaders, and equity advocates through webinars and events to increase awareness of K-12 data science pathway opportunities and support for new policies to ensure equitable adoption.
Hi, I'm Holly Lynn Lee from NC State University, and I'm so excited to be part of the commitment to data science for everyone. I represent a group called High Rise, where we are a hub for innovation and research in statistics education. We have many different projects spanning K-12, work with students as well as teachers, with a particular specialty in teacher professional learning. We have many existing partners and collaborators, and they are all joining with me in this commitment for data science for everyone. We go into classrooms and we get them engaged with high quality data sets and activities, and we think about their learning and the issues that come up and how we can best help teachers to really think about their best pedagogical strategies to get this joy of learning into their classroom. So our group at High Rise is committed to designing and partnering to offer high quality teacher learning through several different initiatives. We cannot wait to join you.
Awesome. I'm continuously impressed and surprised by the work of the community, and we're eager to make this the beginning of something important. I think this will take, the mistake of education reform in America is thinking you can do it overnight. The power of the country is that it actually requires coordinated action from so many different people. But if you actually take that as a given, then actually movement building becomes, I think, the path. And I think what we have seen today is just a range of actors. So let me pass to Steve, who, was one of the people who got this drum roll beating ever louder. And Steve, what are your sort of charges to this community and to us for what you've heard today and the work that comes out of this and next steps?
Hey, thank you, Kumar. So I'm sitting in an attic in Germany. It's at least 100 degrees in here, and it's 10 o'clock, approaching 10 o'clock at night. But I would not have missed this event for anything. And I'm amazed. 4 hours into it, we're still going strong with 112 participants in it. So I thank you for giving me a few minutes to talk about this. So my own small role in this movement started with me just saying enough is enough. I have 4 teenagers. I was helping them with math. Finally, after years of frustration, I decided to have to do a Freakonomics radio podcast on the subject of data science. And my co-author, Stephen Dubner, has a phrase. He calls it the lull before the lull. So in general, when you put all this work into something, and right before it, there's this lull, and you imagine when you launch it, it's just going to explode, okay? But I've learned from, for instance, I did another podcast on trying to save the Amazon rainforest. And I so expected that to get people excited. And in the aftermath of it, even though, there's 2 million downloads of it, nobody cared. Like nothing happened. And so that's exactly what I expected to happen when I did this silly podcast on data science and how bad math was. And the crazy thing was the response was unbelievable from regular people. It's like parents and kids were writing me like hundreds of emails. And the people like Chad Dorsey, who'd been working on this problem for years before it ever occurred to me to start thinking about it, and the philanthropists like Eric and Ken Griffin and the Seagull. It was incredible. And I got to say, I've been lucky enough to be involved in a lot of different activities, different movements, different intellectual things. And there's 2 things that I think are different about this movement than anything that I've ever been involved with. The first one is there are essentially no opponents. I cannot find anyone who doesn't think this is the right thing to do because it is so self-evidently the right thing to do. There's like 7 math teachers out there who complain very, very loudly. But other than that, everybody's a favorite. The other thing that's amazing about this movement is that there's no rivalry. I have never been around a group of people who are so collaborative and cooperative and are so willing to work together and so willing to share credit, to give it away. So you would think, given that this would be easy. But I actually think this is roughly the hardest possible thing you could ever do. And it's not because there are tangible enemies and people fighting you. It's because the system is just so stacked against this kind of change, right? So there's so much inertia. So many of the same people who would write me emails saying how much they believe in data science, when push comes to shove, they kind of like the status quo. It's good. It works for them, and it's too much work to change things. But that's minor. But really, it's the complexity. Okay, it's the moving parts. So, for starters, there's 1,000 visions of what data science is or can be, not one vision. And one of the big challenges we have is how to make it work. But look, I don't think we need a vision. I think one vision would be wrong. I think with like Kumar said, we're trying to, a movement involves, right now, 111 people on this call, but in a few years, 5,000 people on this call. Everybody moving in what they believe the right direction is. And look, it's like like a market in some sense. It's got to sort itself out, and nobody's got the answers. No one knows what the right thing to do is. But the problem is there's so many moving pieces. We need curriculum. We need professional development. We need changing standards. We need, we need colleges and universities to change their mission. I think it's so much. And I have to say, when I actually think about it that way, I always get really discouraged. But then I remember it's not any one person's job to make this change. All you can do is do what you can do, and so what can I do? I can be here helping to be a catalyst with my group Risk to try to make things happen. Okay, but here's what I think is a statement of fact, although it's going to sound like a statement of opinion. This is going to happen. It's just a question of whether it happens in 50 years, 40 years, or sometimes sooner. And it's just a question of whether it's done well or done poorly. And I think there's a lot of variability in when it will come, and there's a lot of variability in which quality will happen. Here's our goal at Data Science for Everyone. Our goal is that in 10 years, every K through 12 classroom in America has data science access. Okay? Let me say that again. Our goal is that within 10 years, every K through 12 classroom in this country, every student in the country will have access to data science. Okay, and how are we going to do that? Well, we're not going to do that. You're going to do that, hopefully. I mean, it really comes out of the backbone, right? The people on this call, the people on the ground are the backbone of making that happen. And look, let's just start with one thing. If you do nothing else today, sign up for the Slack channel. Become really an active member of this community so that you can know what we're doing. And data science for everyone is going to be here doing as much hard work as we can. So what are we specifically going to do? Over the next 2 years, our goals are to add 10 more states to the 20 states that already have committed to embracing data science. We want 5,000 members of the coalition, 5,000 people who are going to be on that Slack channel who are going to be working together with us. We want to double the number of committed schools, the number of committed districts to what we're doing. We're going to work to raise $5 million to be able to give out to people who are working in these areas. And we're going to continue these commitment conferences every year. But more than that, we are going to do anything and everything. We're going to be creative. We are going to break rules. We're going to do whatever we can to try to facilitate the people who are on the ground, what you're trying to do. And I believe we will succeed. And I hope we do, because I told you I have 4 teenagers. What I didn't tell you is I have 2 toddlers. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old as well. And I have a personal stake in the education they get in data science being orders of magnitude better than the ones that my teenagers got. And so I'm relying on all of you to make not just the future of my 2 toddlers better, but of every child in America. Kumar?
Amazing. That was great. And, I think you hit every emotional part of it, which is like the gravity of it, the importance of it, the difficulty of it, the power of the movement, and the fact that we can do it together. So thank you. I'll just sort of close out. We've got just 3 minutes left, and I just want to do some last minutes of thank you. So one, I want to thank Steve and for his leadership, for the Risk team, April Feng at Risk, who's going to be taking a lot of the incoming coming out of today. So I want to thank them for what they're doing. I want to thank a lot of the folks at the Learning Agency that made today possible. A number of the other partners like Concord Consortium, our funding partners, Ken Griffin, as well as the Segal Endowment, as well as a number that are in development. And then I want to thank all the amazing commitment makers who are actually doing all of this work. Like I said, making a commitment is not the work. It's actually a public promise. And we want to help you do that and connect everybody together. And a whole bunch of that is actually sharing and connecting. And so, as Steve mentioned, there's going to be a number of ways for people to participate. There's going to be an active Slack channel that was included. We want to do another commitments conference. We want to do lots of opportunities to flow. And then just coming out of this meeting itself, there's going to be an ongoing happy hour where you should have gotten some information for you to be able to connect into this. And so I'll give, just a deep appreciation for this work, and, leave all of you with the sense that, like, there's a ton of people rooting for this, the importance of this. We had people from across senior levels of the government, from education and elsewhere. And the only way they're going to figure out how they can do it is for us to raise our hand and say, here's what we need to succeed. So with that, let me thank everybody, and especially all the amazing people who stayed with the panel. We've got just incredible work that's happening. And I hope to see some of you at the post-event happy hour. And then, of course, all of you in the Slack channel and in the coming events that will happen. Thanks so much.